Sandra, why are you sharing your screen?
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Robin.
I guess everyone should be on mute, you know. Who's running the meeting?
I am, and I just logged on, so I'll be muting everybody shortly.
Okay, is this going to be a 3-hour meeting, like a regular meeting?
I hope not. We will see how fast we can go. We have a lot of people, especially electeds, that want to talk to us tonight.
Ah, yes, of course. Okay.
Could we perhaps ask that the electeds not do any self-congratulatory stuff and just give us the most important material?
Do you think that they're going to be self-congratulating each other for what? So I think we let them speak how they speak.
I actually think they will, and I don't think that needs to be the purpose of tonight.
I will handle that. I'm going to mute everybody now.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, whoever just joined.
Sandra.
Sandra.
This is cool. I'm excited. This is my first time.
Well, hopefully it all goes well. I'm going to keep muting people as they join, so don't take it personally.
No, I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. Michelle, I see that you're on, so I'm assuming you're going to be taking minutes, or is Eric on?
Yeah, I'm taking minutes today.
All right. Is Eric on to do roll call? Do you know?
I see Eric is on.
He said he would take roll call,
All right.
but be good to confirm.
We're going to get started in just a minute. In the meantime, we do have 2 people who submitted public testimony. I'm going to be reading that when we get started, but I'm also copying and pasting it into the chat section right now, so you can also read it for yourselves in the chat section.
Where's the chat?
All right, so we're going to get started. I just put the 2 public comments into the chat section. I'm going to go ahead and read them as well. Before we get started, I do just want to wish everybody well. Hope you are safe and sound with your families and your homes. I want to thank Clint Smeltzer and Joe Kearns for their help in getting us situated with this technology that we're using, and their help in putting together the little guide that we sent out yesterday to you all. And a new way of us doing business, and we don't know how long it's going to last. Anyway, we don't know how long this is going to last, so hopefully as we continue to use it more and more, we will get better at it and work out any kinks and bumps along the road. So with that being said, I'm going to read the first bit of public testimony that comes to us from Wendy Brower, who says, with Corona, bicycle usage is soaring, and it will be the key to the city's recovery. Let's not close East River Park's Greenway shared path, as it's safe and healthy for riders of all ages. Interim flood protection is a must, especially around NYCHA campuses where flood barriers and resilient infrastructure is already under construction. Let's revisit completing FEMA's patchwork of walls and floodgates to meet the CDBG DR demand that NYCHA's needs be addressed. I look forward to seeing NYCHA's barricaded green spaces reopened, the park preserved, and all of CV3's well-being. The street tree canopy thriving, and the bike lane network expanded. Thank you and be well, everyone. Wendy. Our second piece of public testimony comes from Henry Bubbins from the Greenwich Village Preservation. And he says, as we look for some continuity and inspiration in these times, I just want to thank Community Board 3 and its members and staff for carrying on in the capacity you can to serve the neighborhood. Village Preservation has some online resources that you may find of interest and use while you work or educate or stay at home. For example, you can look at the history of every building in the East Village on our East Village Building Blocks webpage at www.gbsh.org/building-blocks. You can contribute your own stories about the building and its history in the comment section or submit photos. We hope tools like this can help pass the time while also serving as an educational resource for students and researchers. Teachers are also welcome to contact me to explore ways to incorporate the tools in our research section at www.gbsh.org/resources in your online curriculum. I'm glad to see that the executive committee passed a resolution to draw attention to the plight of small businesses and for the urgent need for action on every level of government. Village Preservation stands with the community in these times and stands ready to help in any way we can. Thank you for continuing your work in creative and unfolding ways. I'm Henry Bubbins, East Village and Special Projects Director with Village Preservation. So moving on now to the reports from electeds. We asked many of the electeds to let us know ahead of time that they'd be joining us so that we knew who to look for to unmute. So I know, because I can only see a few of your faces. I can see Carlina. Hi, Carlina. But I know that there are many of the electeds who are planning on joining us. So what I'm going to do is, we heard from Andrew from the mayor's office, Assemblymember Glick, Assemblymember Epstein, Senator Hoyleman, Senator Kavanaugh, Councilmember Chin, who told us they were going to be, Councilmember Rivera, who told us that they were going to be on the meeting. If there's anybody that I didn't call, if you can either shoot me a chat or raise your hand in the raise the hand function so that I can see that you're here, that would be great. And Brian, if you are on, if you can raise your hand so I can unmute you. I'm sorry, Brian from the mayor's office.
You mean Andrew?
What was that?
Andrew, not Brian.
Oh, sorry, that's right, Andrew. Andrew from the Brian. Andrew, sorry about that, Andrew. There you are. Hi. All right. Do you want to give? I'm going to let you go first from the mayor's office to give your report. So go ahead. And if I can just ask all of the electeds in your reports, I know we all want to talk about the same thing. So let's try to not be repetitive and repeat things that have been said by somebody else. Same goes for my fellow community board members. If you want to ask questions, I know we all have a lot of questions and we all probably have a lot of the same questions. So we'll try to get to everyone's questions, but if your question has been answered already by somebody else asking it, just feel free to let me know and we'll skip you and go to the next person. All right, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me to your first virtual full board. This is very exciting. Wonderful that you guys put it together so quickly. So I just want to recap a few things that are coming out of the mayor's office. Any student can pick up 3 meals a day for free at over 400 New York City school buildings. Grab and go food is available Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. And I'm going to include a link in the chat in just a moment where you can find some more information. An update from the mayor's press conference this afternoon. Alternate side parking rules will be suspended tomorrow, Wednesday, March 25th, through Tuesday, March 31st. Meters will still remain in effect. And we just want to remind everybody, if you haven't done it already, to text COVID to 692-692 to get important COVID-19 related updates sent straight to your phone. And you can text COVID ESP to get updates in Spanish. The most important thing you can do right now for your family, for your neighbors, and your community is to stay home. And that's how you can stop the spread of COVID-19 is by practicing social distancing. I will continue to send nightly updates to Alicia and Susan with information that may be helpful to the community. And I want you guys to continue to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. We're here to help and we're doing the best we can to get answers to you as quick as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions for Andrew before we move on to the next person? If you have questions, please use the raise hand feature.
Where is that raised hand feature?
Raise hand feature, if you go into at the bottom of the screen and open the participants section, you will see in that section, you'll have the option to raise your hand or lower your hand.
Is it the yes button?
No, that's for something else. Hold on. Because I have a different screen than you have. So Clint, do you want to jump in
Do
here?
you want me to explain?
Clint?
So this is Olympia, I can explain it. If you click on participants, you're gonna find several icons underneath the names of the people participating. The first icon is a blue hand and it says raise hand. If you click on that, then you would be raising your hand.
Oh, I see it now.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, so Robin, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Robin, can you try to unmute yourself? The system won't let me unmute you.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for that report. I'm curious about what's happening or what the city's doing to follow up with parents who maybe don't have the technology to get their kids online or to even know that there's meals available. I don't know. I know that the city was emailing everybody, but can you just fill me in on or fill us in on what's happening with that population of people who maybe are not clued in electronically to all the things the city's doing?
Yeah, it's my understanding from Chancellor Carranza's reports with the mayor that they have also been doing telephone calls with the students at all the public schools. And they can also call 311 to find out more information about both this and where they can pick up some technology so they can access the virtual learning.
And I guess my final question is, what about all the homeless kids? What's happening with that population?
So
And there's a lot in our community.
we are doing our very best to reach out to them, but that is still a population that we do need to continue to follow up with and make sure that all the children are being taken care of, given the tools to get the 3 meals a day and get the technology for virtual learning. But for further details, I'm going to have to loop back to you, and I'll follow up with Susan.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so there was another call, another raised hand from Eric. I'm not sure Eric who because there's no last name. I'm assuming that's Eric Diaz.
Hi, it's Eric. Yes, Diaz. Quick question. Have you heard anything back from charter schools as far as giving back meals? Any plans there or any information on that?
I haven't been in contact with charter schools about food, but I have been in discussions with a few charter schools about them donating some of the supplies that they have, their sanitation supplies, as well as some of the science equipment, glasses and gloves and whatnot that could be used for first responders and people on the front lines.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And then there's someone who raised their hand who I sent a message to, but they haven't responded. I don't know who this is. Galaxy S10 Plus. Is that a community board member?
Hello. No, that's me. My name is Raymond Lewis. I'm just a new member here, just checking out this meeting. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. We service the New York City area, particularly the Lower East Side. So we was attempting, me and my chapter president was attempting to go to the meeting before this COVID crisis, but we just wanted to join in on the meeting just to see exactly what goes on in this area. Hopefully we can be a part of.
Okay, thank you very much. Just for your knowledge, just so you know, usually public session is open to everybody. We did it a little differently this time around because of the virtual meeting. So next time around, if we're still meeting virtually, if you want to make any announcements or anything like that, sign up for public session. Normally during the elected session and during the business session, it's reserved only for board members to ask questions or make comments. So just so you know that, okay?
Oh, okay. Not a problem.
All right. So what we're going to do next is, since there's a lot of electeds on, we're going to do the electeds first, and then we're going to backtrack and do the people who are representing electeds who couldn't join us. So I know that Assembly Member Glick and Epstein were planning on joining us. Are either of you on? If so, please raise your hand so I can unmute you.
Yeah, we're here.
All right. Harvey, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can go. I don't know if Deborah's office wants to go first, but I mean, hi CB3. It's good to see you all, and I know it's a little odd that we're all doing this way, but I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with everyone virtually and talk about so many important issues that are going on. I mean, the state's in a mess. We all know that right now. We're about a week away from the state budget being finalized. And hopefully if Congress resolves something in the next day or so, we can get an agreement. We'll know what dollars are coming to our state. but it's a mess. Just to be honest, the state budget, it's at least a $7 billion hole is what we're thinking. Robert Mojica is talking more about a potentially $15 billion hole. I mean, the impact that'll have on the city budget. Last Thursday, the governor's office had a Medicaid redesign team proposal that would cut $2.5 billion out of our healthcare budget. So lots of cuts that are going to be really hurtful over the next months and potentially years to come. So I think just it's not a fun time, it's not a good time, but it's a real situation with the revenue falling apart and not sure what the next income's coming in, extending the filing dates for taxes, which is important to do. New York is going to really suffer. We don't want New York City or New York State to fall apart, but it's a real potential. So I think the message, everyone's doing a great job. I think social distancing in New York, not everyone, but a lot of us are doing a good job. I think that's really important. Keep that up. We got to keep up as much as we can and how we can help our friends and our neighbors. If we hear people who have problems, obviously reach out to my office, on the assembly side, Yulene and Deborah. On the Senate side, Brad, Brian, Liz, well, not Liz, Brad and Brian. And of course, Carlina. We are really lucky in our neighborhood to have such amazing leaders. The things that you're seeing that aren't being taken care of, we're hearing a lot from nonprofits who are just having funding issues. If there's things that any of our offices can do, we can be helpful with it. I know the controller was really helpful. Michael, I see you there. An issue earlier I had for a group which couldn't, with problem paying their employees. The controller's office got that resolved today. The borough president. So I think all of us are going to be working as a team, but everyone's going to be a point person on different issues. So, obviously there's a lot going on. There's a lot of help that's needed. And if you hear about things, just get it to us and we will figure out how to make sure that someone's moving forward. Whether it's food insecurity, people afraid about their rent, commercial businesses not sure how they're going to be able to keep their employees going or how they're going to pay their rent. Those are all going to be real issues that I'm not sure we're going to have good solutions for, but we're going to try. And some of the solutions are going to be grants, some of them are going to be loans, and some are going to be, we need to figure it out. But the more we hear, the more we can all figure out together. So that's the message that we all need to do. We're all in this together. We all need to figure it out together. And the hope is that if we keep communicating, keep talking, keep sharing information, we'll come up with solutions that'll be better for most of New York. So thanks everyone, and I hope everyone can do the best they can with social distancing, and if they have time with family, that's wonderful. But just be careful and be mindful as you do the things you need to do to keep your life moving along.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel like you're saving the world when you're watching Netflix from your couch, but if we do this right, nothing happens. A successful shelter in place means you're going to feel like it was all for nothing, and you'd be right, but nothing means that nothing happened to your family, and that's what we're going for here.
All right, so I see a couple of hands for questions for Harvey. I think, Carlin, you have a question? Carlin, where'd you go? Hold on. All right, while we figure out what's going on with Carlin, are you able to speak? You're unmuted. Okay, so let's go to Olympia.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Harvey. So my question is about the two main concerns that we hear from most people, that is the rent is due on April 1st, and I know Senator Gianaris introduced a bill yesterday, but what can we do? Is there something CB3 can do? It is very important that since mortgages have been, freezed, the eviction moratorium is not really protecting people who are gonna either to find the money in 90 days or face eviction in 90 days. So this is one question. And the other one is, I know the bill was made public yesterday about the federal bailout. People who, New York is full of gig workers that currently are not covered by any unemployment, and they're desperate. So what can we do to help for the push for these emergency unemployment benefits to be real? Because what we hear from the Hill, etc., is that these benefits, some of them are going to be tax rebates, but these people need to eat today, not in how many months they're going to get their tax rebate, and they have kids. and the gig workers, many of them, especially artists, their gigs were canceled already like weeks ago because of the international outbreak. So these are the two main issues that I'm very concerned, because everybody around me is very concerned about those.
Yeah. And just Olympia, I don't think we have really great answers for any of these questions. I do think we're talking a lot about it at the state level to figure out how we can protect as many people as possible. On the rent side, I think what's good about the moratorium, hopefully people saw my letter last week and Brad's letter last week. Brad took great leadership on this around getting a moratorium going, that we got 90 days, is we got a little time for everyone to breathe. So I know rent is coming due April 1st for a lot of folks, but luckily there's no court case can be started. There's a moratorium on evictions. And hopefully by 90 days or before 90 days, we will be out of the crisis and we'll be able to figure out what federal dollars are available, what city dollars are available to people who need help with rent, whether there's a rent subsidy available. Right now, there are things called one-shot deals that people have rent arrears. They lost their job and they've now got a new job. Those things are still going to be available, and we're just going to need additional funding in those one-shot deals. I don't know, because we don't know how long this is going to last, whether that's going to be sufficient or whether the city will have enough dollars. So we're going to have to play that a little by ear until once we get past this. The second thing around making sure gig workers is something that we've been talking to the governor a lot about. I know not just me, but I'm sure every city and state elected official has been saying we need to ensure that whatever happens on the federal level, we protect people who have a gig economy. It is unlikely in my mind to be included in the federal package, unfortunately. So we're going to have to figure out whether the state and the city, who are both going to be fiscally in deep, deep, deep trouble, can do anything. I don't have a simple answer, because I'm not sure we're going to have the resources to keep the lights on at this point, and that's really the question. And so if we don't have the resources to keep the lights on, and then we're going to have to start furloughing more state employees, we're making the situation worse, not better. And that's the answer. I think one big solution, which we're talking about, is this bonding authority, whether we can just basically borrow money now and bond it out so we can pay it back over the long term. And that may be the solution, but that comes at great risk. So that's something we're definitely discussing, and within the next couple of days, we'll have to figure that out.
All right. Thank you, Harvey. Carlin, are you able to ask a question? We still can't hear you, Carlin. You're unmuted on my end. All right, now everyone's unmuted. Carlin, you want to try that again?
Yeah.
All right, Carlin, try to unmute yourself and talk.
Maybe you could type it into the
Carlin,
chat.
you can type it into the chat. I can ask it. For some reason, you're not able to speak to us. I don't know why. So let's move on to Michelle Coopersmith.
Hi, I just had a question if the Assembly is considering raising the 2% austerity cap in order to deal with this, and if there are any creative solutions about raising taxes on certain folks in order to try and compensate for the budget hole that you described.
Harvey, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think people may know that the governor has proposed a self-imposed 2% spending cap on all new revenue, and the idea was that we're trying to be fiscally responsible. It's not a real spending cap. It's not anywhere in the statute, and it's not required anywhere. And it's something that we in the Assembly and I know in the Senate have been pushing back on. I think the reality is, based on the current spending, we're going to see a lot less spending because we'll have a lot less revenue. But I do think that we should just ignore the cap and push the governor on that. On the revenue side, I have lots of bills to add new revenue: millionaires, billionaires tax, mezzanine debt tax. Brad's got the pied-à-terre tax. We have lots of sources of new revenue that would not hurt individual New Yorkers. We've heard the line from the governor's office that they do not want to put new revenue streams in the market, and I don't really understand why. especially since we could even say that they don't apply now, we could start them in January next year, and people, especially millionaires and billionaires, won't even feel the 1 or 2% increase in the income tax. But you know, he's the driver in the budget. In the state budget, the governor sets the budget, and under a case called Silvery Pataki, he's the only one who can amend it. So if we can't get him to agree, we only have one other choice, is to vote no on the budget. So I think there's a lot of people who've been talking about revenue in both houses, and we've been pushing hard, and along with lots of advocacy groups. And I hope that we will get it, but I'm not optimistic it'll be in the budget, just because he's been saying unequivocally that he does not want to seek new revenue sources in this year's budget.
All right, we have one last question for you, Harvey. It's from Robin Chattel.
Hi, Harvey.
Hi, Robin.
I think, things like rent, holding off on rents, of course, makes sense, and the mortgages as well, which is where I am and a lot of people in the community are. But I guess I'm assuming that you all are thinking about the domino effect of that, right? If landlords don't get their rent, then they can't pay their bills, and so on and so on and so forth. And so if they don't pay their heating bills, then the heating company can't have money, that whole thing. But you just mentioned not having money for electricity. And I'm wondering if are the utilities being spoken to about this as well? Or does it have to come from the feds? Like, how does that work?
Well, yeah, a good question, Robin. I think the federal bailout is what's going to help us figure this all out. I think both on the Senate and the Assembly side, we're going to have to figure out how much federal dollars are going to be put on the table, especially on healthcare. I think the biggest problem we have is right now in healthcare, and we're seeing the need for additional hospital services. So I hope that we're not looking at cuts. If we get those healthcare dollars, then we will be able to allocate those, and then question will be, how do we have bonding authority to make the financing work better for all of us? And that's the question that no one has an answer to today, but we will have a need to have an answer by the end of the week. I assume we're going to be up there. I think Brad thinks we're going up earlier than I do, but I think probably by the weekend we will be back up in Albany and hopefully have a sense of what it looks like. But I don't have high expectations that we are going to have enough resources. So it looks like a budget that will be a cutting budget. So, how do we manage in those terms, and what the impact will be on the city budget? If we cut back the city, then we're just telling the city that they won't be able to turn the lights on. So I think this is a real crisis that we're all facing. And my answer is always if we can find new revenue sources, and that's going to be the message I will continue to put out to Albany. And I know that my colleagues will do that. I know Brad's been a real leader. Deborah's been a leader. We have Yulene. We've all been trying to push this message out for our community. I'm just not clear it's coming through across the state, because there are lots of other districts that aren't like ours. So the hope is that you can help us. The board could write resolutions in support of additional funding. If we could do it quickly, the board could say, we want to make sure that this is happening. The board could say we want to put policy out of the budget. A lot of things the board could do to help your state elected officials, and then in the end, will help the city elected officials, in this really, really difficult fiscal time. And I hope that that's what CB3 will continue to do, because CB3 has been a leader on these issues.
Thank you, Harvey.
So thank you, and sorry to take up so much time.
That's quite all right. Assemblymember Glick, I'm not seeing you if you're on. If you're on, can you let me know? You can raise your hand, or...
What do you call this thing?
Assemblymember Glick?
She's here. She's just on mute. If you could unmute her, maybe.
I need her to raise her hand so I know who to unmute. I'm dealing with 95.
How do I raise my hand?
There she is.
Hold on. Can you speak? There she. Well, you're speaking, so you don't need to raise your hand. So go ahead.
I think I'm speaking. Am I speaking? Can I be here?
Right.
Yes, Deborah.
Okay, I'm on the air. Look, first of all, I apologize. Technology has not been my first strongest point, and it took a while to get done with CB1. Anyway, first of all, I hope everybody is well, and that their families are well, and that you're taking care and taking advice from medical experts and not the fool at the top. First of all, the most important, I know Harvey said that it will be very helpful once we have a federal response. And that is absolutely true. The budget is going to be really made up. At this point, we have bled a tremendous amount of money and will continue doing so in order to provide health care to New Yorkers. Within a day, it'll be tens of thousands. So the more testing we do, the more people we find, and the more people who find themselves being sick. So the first thing we need to do is eliminate, both federally and at state, any eligibility requirements for unemployment insurance. That is an existing system that can drive money into people's pockets right away. And having false barriers is not helpful. We have a lot of folks who are freelancers. We have folks who have worked in restaurants. They lost their jobs. They need money right away. And the best way to do it, the fastest way, is through the unemployment system. So that's number one. Number two, schools are working remotely. It is possible that there are students that still need devices. There is a website, coronavirus.schools.nyc/remote learning devices. That is to the DOE so that people can get those devices for their kids. Kids with IEPs are going to have their families reached out to so that they can discuss how they can continue their plans. Obviously, food is available at hub schools from 7:30 to 1:30. Folks can sign up for alerts from the city and the state if they have smartphones. For the city, it's texting COVID to 692-692. For the state, it's texting New York to 81336. Most of our not-for-profits are actually providing, they're monitoring their phones and emails just like we are. Our offices are working, responding to calls, emails. We are on the phone calls with the city, with the state. Manhattan Chamber of Commerce had a very interesting webinar yesterday. They are having a couple more this week that are targeted to businesses to figure out, what support is available. More support will be available in the coming weeks. The budget's going to be a mess. I think the 2% is kind of out the window, but it's all going to be focused on healthcare, I think. And I don't know what more one can say about that. The state also has a website, esd.ny.gov, where that will have and will continue to have more COVID-19 disaster relief information as it becomes available. And the AG, if you have an employer that is not following any of the appropriate rules as we go forward, whether it's unemployment, paid leave, the AG has a hotline at 212-416-8700. And of course, any additional questions that people have, we're going to try to get answers. We don't have them all yet. And I apologize for being slow to get on to this.
No problem. Thank you, Assembly Member. Are there any questions for the Assembly Member? Please use the raise hands function so I can see. Robin?
Thanks for letting me ask so many questions today.
Your last one, girl.
I don't know. Thank you. You mentioned testing. Deborah, but NYU hospital isn't testing anyone any longer unless you're admitted. So what are the plans for what's happening on the testing ground?
Well, I think that because the availability of tests is so reduced, thanks to the slow response, and actually the federal government saying no to the World Health Organization's offer a month ago. They are, again, in hospitals in the city, they are reserving those tests for people admitted to the hospital and I believe healthcare workers. Outside of the city, they are still doing, in some locations, drive-through testing, but it is again by appointment, and it is totally only for people who are symptomatic. So I think if you're not symptomatic, you're not going to be have tests available to you. But I do know that the governor is pressing the feds for us to actually shift to testing. I think it's serology tests, which indicate whether you have antibodies, which would indicate that you have been infected but have recovered and have the antibodies. I've heard him discuss that as really the next step, because we think there are a significant number of New Yorkers who have been somewhat sick but have recovered and may have had COVID-19, and that would be very important to know. But you're right, at the moment, they're not doing widespread testing unless you're turning up with some symptoms at a hospital.
All right. And we've got another question from Michael Perlis. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi. Thank you again. I'm wondering if you support Assembly Member Yuling New's bill to suspend rent payments for 90 days for residential and small business tenants if they.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate thing to do. I know I've heard from a couple of my small business folks that their landlords have voluntarily suspended for 2 months. They'll revisit it at that point. One of them said that they have, their landlord is the MTA, who is completely unhelpful and is requiring them to stay open even though there's no foot traffic or very little. And so they are feeling the pinch, and there are some business taxes that should be waived at this point that have not yet been. Our income taxes have been moved from April to July, both federal and state, but business taxes, many of them have not been waived, and the commercial rent tax is the stupidest tax to begin with, and that should be immediately waived. The city has been slow to step up on water and sewer taxes, commercial rent tax. Those are things that should be immediately waived. But I agree that we should, where we, if you don't have people cooperating, this is an emergency. So, I agree with the bill, but if it's not rolled into the budget, we're not going to be taking up individual bills.
Thank you.
Including my pied-à-terre tax, which Brad Hoylman and I have.
All right. Thank you, Assembly Member. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gail, I see that you're on. Do you want to do your report now, or do you want me to keep moving on to the state senators?
Whatever you want. I wouldn't mind doing it now because I have to go somewhere else, but it's up to you.
Why don't you go ahead, and then we'll move on to the state senators.
I'll be quick. Thank you very much. I want to just mention some good news. On the census, Manhattan is #1. We're at 19.5% response. Staten Island is at 19%. They're moving very quickly. We got to keep beating them. The Bronx is at 16.3, Queens is at 15.9, and Brooklyn is 15.1. So thank you everybody who filled it out and keep filling it out. So we've been working with, just like all the other electeds and all of you, we've been answering hundreds of phone calls with a great staff from the top to the bottom of Manhattan. And one of the things that I focused on over the weekend was because I have contacts when we saved the Garment Center in there. We got EDC going, and we got contracts for people in the Garment Center and the last manufacturer in Manhattan to make facial shields. So those contracts are out. Of course, now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of companies around the world are sending information to EDC about that they have masks and they have this and they have that. EDC is doing the vetting, and then they're sending those that are vetted to the Department of Health and to the OEM, Office of Emergency Management. I think there's still a problem because the departments that are working with the seniors that are now going delivery as of today, as opposed to grab and grow. All the senior centers are being delivered for their meals when they are part of the senior centers that DIFTA runs, and I'll talk about the others in a minute. So I'm concerned about the senior center deliverers not having enough materials, and I got a call today from a big senior hospital, not an H&H, not a private hospital, but a one that's independent, that they are desperate for masks and gowns and so on. So I have put a lot of focus into making sure that the healthcare workers have what they need, and I think the city still needs to step up. So just so you know, we're focused on that. We're also focused on food, as we always have been, and you should know that Fresh Direct, to their credit, is delivering 5 days a week in Manhattan for free. We picked the NYCHA location, so we're going to start today at Dyckman Houses, which is a NYCHA development in Inwood, and we're working our way down to the Lower East Side and Harlem along the way. So we'll make sure you know the locations on the Lower East Side. We have let the tenant leaders know, and I just want to let you know how great they are on the Lower East Side, because they're all working together for when the deliveries come in, and that's incredibly fantastic. We're also, we have really, I think we put a lot of time into a daily newsletter. Yesterday's newsletter, for instance, included funding that's available from the Bloomberg Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Robin Hood Foundation, and I know Goldman Sachs also has money. So for the organizations, you need to apply. You also need to apply, if you're small, to the small business services. Everybody is swamped, but there are actual grants available for nonprofits and small business, and I also urge you to apply. We will continue to put that information into the newsletters. Obviously, today we had another one, and it's chock full of information, and one of them is just this afternoon. You'll see it in our newsletter. The city has posted a website where you can actually apply for food, and that to me is, you know, between food and shelter and having a job, those don't have jobs right now, awful lot of people, and food is so important. Food Bank is also looking for volunteers. That's on our information list, along with much other information. We have got some essential businesses added to the list. We got the bike shops added to the city list because obviously many of us are riding around on our bikes and we need those shops to be open. And I also got the dry cleaners added to the governor's list because they are often cleaning the uniforms of the first responders. The laundromats were on the list and they wanted to be on it also. And I think they actually have a reason to be, and they have tailors. There are 2,000 tailors working in dry cleaners in the city of New York. I'm also, we will continue to work. We are working with all the council members on appointing community board members. Obviously, for the new members, we are not doing individual interviews, but we are all focusing very highly, very strongly on working with the any kind of technology, which we're very familiar with. We also purchased for all 12 community boards a very extensive and expensive Zoom package. I think you know that. It could list 200-300 people together and then 500 to listen. And so we're very glad that so many community boards are using it. And we're very glad that 100%, you should be very proud, all 12 community boards are now virtual. I don't know if that's true in all the boroughs, but I know it's true in Manhattan, and I want to congratulate you. And just finally, just some very local, we're getting a lot of calls for I have space, because obviously the hospitals, you heard earlier maybe that the hospitals have to expand either 50% or 100%. So we've gotten some suggestions for Rivington House and Basketball City and Performance Space New York. We have brought those to the attention of the city, but there are websites where you do need to make sure that people know about them. These are particular ones that I think would make sense, so I have brought them to the attention of the mayor's office. But anybody else, you need to go to the OEM Share Your Space website. It's called actually that, OEM Share Your Space Survey, and then put that information in. Also, regarding ESCR and the park, we are going to hold a virtual meeting with Pratt Center. They're, of course, the facilitators of the community advisory group for the park before the end of the month. And we are continuing to make sure that the Lower East Side Ecology Center's compost yard is returned to the park. I feel very strongly about that, as does the mayor when he was asked about it. So we're very focused on that. And I think you know that we have, the city has postponed all ULURPs. You're very aware of that. And we opposed the 3 St. Mark's last, it seems like 100 years ago, but when ULURPs were still on paper, we submitted our ULURP recommendation on 3 St. Parks to oppose the TDR. We feel very strongly about that. So I think, you know, I could go on and on because there are so many calls coming into our office, but I think those are the issues that I wanted to bring to your attention. Obviously, there are many more, but congratulations on what you're doing. And we look forward to being as supportive as we possibly can. We have gotten quite a few requests for food from residents and buildings in Community Board 3, and we have been responding to them, I think, satisfactorily, but let us know. I'm very, very focused on making sure that people have food, and we have gotten, you know, I have to say, a lot of support from the mayor's office. We're giving them a lot of support, but we are making sure that every single person who contacts us gets an answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. We've got one question for you from Olympia Kazi. Go ahead, Olympia.
Hi, Gail. First of all, thank you so much for your newsletters. They're extremely helpful and full of resources. One thing about the small business grants that you mentioned, the reports we're hearing from many people is that the requirements are still too much. People don't qualify. And the fact that they make them actually available to, they say it's up to 4, but up to 5, but it's 4 employees. It's problematic. Many small businesses have a lot of part-time people, etc. So the people have been pushing for improvement on those small business grants, and the United Small Businesses NYC, where Cooper Square Committee, ANHD, JSCDC, all the good people are working together, have put out recommendations about it. So if you can, you know, with your connections at the city, let them hear the small businesses that are suffering most, what kind of grants they need from SBS would be great.
I will absolutely do that. Thank you so much.
Great. There doesn't seem to be any other people raising their hand to ask you a question, Gail. So thank you very much. Oh, wait, one more. Eric Diaz, go ahead.
Hi, Gail. Just wanted to follow up. I know this whole county initiative thing came on for census, but since Corona, just wanted to see what the update is with that, because I know some extra money's coming with the census. Wanted to see the update and latest on that.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I mean, I think we're all just trying to fill it out. I haven't heard how we're going to handle April 1st and how people are going to handle going door to door. I mean, I'm hoping that since people are home, they will either mail in, call in, use their technology, but we haven't heard anything definite yet about how the census in general, but we'll keep you up to date.
Thank you again, Gail. We've got another question from Megan Joy.
Hi, Gail. Gail, just for the employees that are working for us, we have a couple that are dreamers, right? They're in the process of getting their green card or their citizenship. And they have been advised by their immigration lawyers not to apply for unemployment benefits because of Trump's rule that if you apply for benefits, it may halt the process of your green card. Is there any reprieve for these people?
I know the issue very well, that public charge, and I won't use a bad word, but I will find out for you. I don't know the answer, but I certainly know what you're talking about. So let me get back to you, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and our next question is from our chair, Alicia.
Hi, Alicia.
Hey, how are you, Gail? I have a question. I know I saw that they're giving food to the NYCHA developments, but was there any offering for some of the Section 8 developments?
We only had 5 days that we could get Fresh Direct, and they have to go to the same place, like on a Monday to Inwood, like a Tuesday to, Wrangell or whatever. So what you and I can do is talk offline. We have identified other sources of food today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem.
All right, thank you again, Gail. We're gonna move on.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, so next we're gonna go to Senator Kavanaugh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
we can. Yes, sir.
Oh, this is remarkable. Okay, thank you all. First of all, I just want to say, Gail said it well, but it really is great that the board is convening, and at this time when everybody's so dependent on the government responding well, and not only to provide service and resources for all, but also information. It's really great that you're providing this forum for everybody. So I think Deborah and Harvey gave you a pretty good sense of where we are with the biggest item at the state level, which is the budget. I would just note that, Deborah's characterization that it's mostly going to be about healthcare and emergency resources for people is correct. In my view also, I would just add that, as the housing chair, I had already spent a lot of time, and I think I've spoken at this board about the need for additional resources for permanent housing for people who are facing eviction or experiencing homelessness. And I just think that need has obviously been, magnified massively by the public health crisis. And I think I want to emphasize there's been a lot of focus recently on this question of how people are going to deal with the fact that they can't pay their rent because they've been displaced. But there's a separate but related thing, which is we really do need, I think, it's an appropriate response to the public health situation to be trying to find ways to prevent people from having to live in congregate settings and live in public places. So I think that need is more urgent than ever, and I continue to advocate for us to address that either through the standard budget process or through what I expect to be very substantial amounts of emergency funding that are going to come our direction. The state, we've also taken a few specific steps in Albany that haven't been mentioned. We did expand unemployment benefits and sick leave to make them easier for people to access by eliminating some of the restrictions on getting them, including, normally sick leave, you have to actually be physically sick to get it, but we made it clear that people who are, quarantined or otherwise isolated also, and as a result of that can't work, could also get those benefits. And, we made it easier for people to get unemployment. But again, I agree with Deborah Glick that we have a lot more to do to reduce barriers for those kinds of programs now and again, this is a moving target. When we did that last week, I think we hadn't seen quite the level of displacement that we've already seen. It's accelerated even in the last 6 days. So there's a lot more work to do there. We also did pass this legislation that clarified that the governor's, the pre-existing emergency powers of the governor include situations like the one we find ourselves in where an infectious disease is causing an emergency. And that is the thing that's given him some of the power to act decisively in the manner that he has. We also did expand the range of things he can do in response to an emergency. I'll say that is something that one should do carefully, giving executive kind of unilateral authority. But many people thought that in the midst of a crisis, it was important to do that. And again, I think you have seen the governor acting decisively and in ways that a lot of people, I think, appreciate. That power, the new power, expires next April 1st. So, it's limited in that way. We also passed a bill to address the fact that people were still petitioning to get on the ballot to run for election, and we ended that process and required that petitions be submitted by this previous Friday. And again, that was a direct response to the public health situation where, you just don't want people out on the street approaching each other with clipboards and pens. And so we closed that out. And on the housing stuff, we also played a role in pushing for the moratorium it was alluded to earlier, but there was a moratorium on evictions, on residential evictions, and on foreclosures. It kind of happened in phases. First, the courts announced that eviction orders wouldn't be enforced and eviction proceedings would be stayed. And then it was followed up with an executive order that makes it clear that the statutes of limitations were being told, and so the courts are not even accepting filings except for emergencies, the housing courts. So, and again, Brad Hoylman, I think, might be on the call, who's the chair of our Judiciary Committee, and I worked closely on that, and I think it's a very positive step.
Thanks for your leadership.
I was going to thank you. And just so I know I'll have I'll take questions. I just want to say our office, as Deborah Glick mentioned, and Harvey, we're all functioning. Everybody's remote, but our phones are routed to somebody who can actually answer. The elected officials, including all the folks on this call, have really been coordinating closely and staying in touch and doing conference calls, in addition to being on the statewide and the city health department calls. We're also coordinating with each other to make sure we're getting the best response. And we've been surveying our senior centers and our educational institutions and our homeless providers and our hospitals and everybody to make sure that we are identifying issues they're having and making sure resources are available. If you need us, our phone number and email are the same as always, and they're on our website. And other than that, I think I'll end there and just say, everybody, please stay home if you can and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for Senator Kavanaugh? All right, why don't we move on to Senator Hoylman?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. History in the making here with your first Zoom, as far as I know, Zoom conference call. And just wanted to echo all of my colleagues. They've been doing a terrific job. Deborah, Harvey, Brian, the borough president, Euleen. It's been a real group effort. I just wanted to mention a few things that haven't, that haven't been touched on exactly from my office. First, I'm responding to the crisis. My team is responding to the crisis, and Caroline's on the line here, by signing up volunteers. One of the things that we've learned is that people over 60 or who have pre-existing conditions probably shouldn't be going out and food shopping, at least without taking dramatic precautions to protect themselves. One way around that is to get younger folks who are willing and able to do grocery shopping for them. So I'll share a link right now to a Google Doc that we've collected, close to 200 volunteers who are working with groups like God's Love We Deliver and housing complexes, for example, and helping folks do that kind of shopping. Speaking of shopping, my second point is that I sent a letter to the CEOs of all the largest grocery chains in the city and urged them to institute senior hours, which a number of them have already, I'm happy to say, including Whole Foods, and in Kips Bay, Morton Williams has done it, and I think other grocery stores are following suit. In that vein, I introduced a bill a couple of weeks ago that would clamp down on price gouging during a state emergency. Our state has a very vague statute when it comes to what retailers can charge of certain items during such a state of emergency. It's basically defined as unconscionable, which is really for a court to determine, and obviously could take a long time to hash out, as well as not give retailers or consumers any guidance. What I'm proposing, and I hope we get it in the budget, as both Harvey and Deborah alluded to, along with Brian, almost everything we do get done is going to get done in the budget this year. We would set a 10% cap for an item that was a household medical supply items, such as hand sanitizer or wipes or Tylenol. So I'm hopeful that we can get that bill raised for the attention of the Senate, and as they discuss these issues in the coming days on the budget. Fourth item is, in my capacity as Judiciary Chair, I work very closely with Senator Kavanaugh on the foreclosure issue and eviction one. We introduced a bill together on that front. We might see something like that in the budget. We have obviously sent a letter, as Brian alluded to, and got some action from the governor and the Office of Court Administration. But I've also written to the governor seeking that he pause statutes of limitations for civil and criminal matters, because the courts are basically shut down and no claims can be filed unless they're of the greatest urgency. So I'm hopeful that we'll see a directive on that front during this crisis period. And another bill that I've worked on, some of you know, called the Child Victims Act, had a 1-year look-back window for adult survivors of child sexual abuse. Well, now you can't even file a claim as an adult survivor in terms of taking advantage of this Child Victims Act. So we basically cut the 1-year look-back window off by 7 months, unless we extend the Child Victims Act further, which is what I've been campaigning for even before this crisis, because states like California and New Jersey and Hawaii have all extended their look-back windows for adult survivors of child sexual abuse. It's now more urgent than ever that we do so. And then wanted just to mention a couple of other things. I've been working on the face mask front too, believe it or not. There are offers of face masks, as Gail mentioned, being made in the garment district, which is pretty cool. But I received an offer to redistribute like 10,000 face masks, for example. I reached out to the FDA on behalf of another individual who wanted to donate face masks, but they were stuck at the border in Mexico and had to get FDA clearance. So we're doing this kind of stuff like on one-offs, but it's been very successful. The governor and the city have daily or almost daily calls, and we've been able to communicate with them directly. So if you have particular issues, and I know on the small business front, which was the fifth thing I wanted to mention, a lot of our small businesses are struggling. We have not yet seen a directive, as Deborah mentioned and Harvey mentioned, on sales tax, but it is being forgiven. There's nothing official at the moment, but the deadline is being extended. But we hope to see something clear for our small business owners on that front. The small businesses, people talk about loans. They don't want loans, and that's not going to be helpful. So we really have to push federal aid and state aid that gives these struggling small businesses, a leg up during this difficult time. I know that my colleagues are going to be working on that with me. And then finally, wanted to just mention, or Caroline might just kill me, that you can contact our office or the governor's office if you're a retired medical professional. A lot of those individuals are being recruited to serve in hospitals. And then I issued a letter recently to the FDA. The feds are calling for blood donations because of the national shortage in the blood supply. But, a lot of us who are LGBTQ cannot donate blood unless we're abstinent for a year, which is a really steep, challenge, I think, for anyone, and unnecessary, given the scientific evidence that HIV can be screened through in blood that's donated. So hopefully this is an opportunity to strike one for civil rights and equality while we replenish the nation's blood supply at the same time. So those are my main points. Other than that, Deborah mentioned the calls, the hotlines you can call. I would like to mention that there has been a spike in hate crimes against the Asian American community, and the Attorney General Tish James has set up a specific hotline in connection with that, and we should all make certain that she be informed of any information in connection with that kind of absolutely outrageous and unacceptable response to this public health crisis. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I'll just be listening in the comfort of my living room.
Thanks, Brad. We do have a couple of questions for you. First is from Megan Joy.
Hi, Brad. You had mentioned something about sales tax forgiveness. I didn't hear anything about sales tax forgiveness, maybe forgiveness on the penalties or fines for paying late. Is that what you meant?
As far as I know, the governor's office, and Caroline, feel free to jump in. The governor's office has extended the deadline. Isn't that right, Caroline? But without any official directive.
Correct. They're not charging any penalties as of right now, but they're not being super clear about when the new deadline is. But if you weren't able to pay it on the 20th, then they're not going to penalize you.
But we're pushing them for something more concrete.
Yeah.
On our daily calls. In fact, we signed a letter with I think almost all of our Democratic colleagues in connection with that.
All right. Our next question is from Robin Chattel.
Hi, thanks. Brad, you mentioned something about the senior hours at the grocery store, which I think is a great idea. I have heard a couple stories where there still aren't appropriate items in those stores during those times. I don't know how. Obviously, it's not your job to monitor that, but maybe there's a way that could be monitored, or when when that letter goes out to mention that. Like, at times the delivery for chicken, for example, I've noticed isn't there at those early hours. It doesn't get set up till later.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing, in addition to the senior hours that we've requested, is to ask grocers to prevent hoarding. The last thing you want to see if you're in a market and you're a senior is the guy in front of you, like, a 35-year-old with, a case of paper towels, right? So we've asked them to limit certain necessary items as well. We haven't gotten official responses back. We are seeing some responses, but we'll continue to monitor it. And Robin, if you have specific examples, we'd love to have those as a way to follow up.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
We're going to hear from Carlina Rivera next.
Hi.
Hi.
Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Great. My colleagues did so well in updating you all. I'm glad I was here to listen to each and every one of you. It has been incredibly harrowing. It's been challenging. It has been heartbreaking and uplifting. And, you hear great stories, but people are panicking. So there was a lot covered on housing and small business and taking care of, the remote learning challenges that are happening in our Department of Education, in our schools just generally. Just earlier today, I assisted an organization to give out laptops because some of the laptops that the DOE has given out are not working. So there are nonprofits that help with technology. And so we're making sure that people have functioning tech while they're at home. There have been a couple things going on in the council that we're trying to work on. As you know, we're a little bit limited in some of the things that we can do in terms of, executive orders, especially at the governor's level and even at the mayor's level, could really, really support and change a lot of the things that are happening right now. There could be an executive order to suspend the commercial rent tax. There could be an executive order to deal with our park situation and how people are congregating. However, these are all things that we've seen kind of unfold in the news, and we are trying to be really receptive in terms of what we're hearing and people's needs. But things that we're trying to do in terms of my office, as you know, I have an incredible staff of about 6 people. We have organized dozens and dozens of volunteers. We have made hundreds and hundreds of calls to some of our elderly neighbors, to some of our seniors. We've received a ton of calls as well. And we are making sure that we are pushing for those senior hours. We do have a number of supermarkets that are participating, that we're posting to let people know. We also, the bike shops, making them an essential business. That was something that we were especially passionate about, making sure people are still completing the census. And also talking to some of our local manufacturers. I've been working with the Navy Yard on even just local production. Some of the organizations, the companies that are there, they are taking great risks and are probably risking bankruptcy. And they have converted their manufacturing because they know it's the right thing to do. And they're hoping to have citywide level production of things like face shields and gowns and hand sanitizer. And they even developed a prototype for a do-it-yourself ventilator. So this is where people are considering how dire the situation is. As you've seen, our hospital situation is getting exponentially worse every single day. That is because there has been inaction from the federal government. Even the city, the mayor's office has been, I think, slow to move. There's just so many things I think we have to do now at an urgent level that we haven't been. And I feel like our city, especially our hospitals, they will be at capacity very, very soon. And we will be setting up more and more field hospitals as time goes by. You probably heard about the Javits Center. They're looking at larger facilities, we had them look at Mount Sinai, Beth Israel for the building that was empty there. Just any large spaces where we can put additional beds. You know about the capacity issue, but we have hospitals like Elmhurst and Queens Hospital acting as basically just large ICUs. It is very, very, very serious. Lincoln Hospital is also pretty much at capacity, and every single facility is getting worse and worse. So we're trying to just be responsive to our constituents, and a lot of you have been really, really amazing. In terms of small business, we've called for a ton of things for the state and the city to do. I wrote a letter to the mayor and the governor that was in the New York Post. Sometimes, they cover good stories. They also covered a local doctor who's amazing at Mount Sinai, Beth Israel. His name is Ian Kwok. They just did a tweet and they picked up the story. So we're trying to stay positive, but it will get a lot worse before it gets better. And again, everyone is doing their best. This is unprecedented. It's stressful. But for all of our small businesses, our cultural institutions, our cultural workers that are taking a very, very big hit, we will be negotiating a budget that will look probably a lot different than last year, but I will be making all of these organizations and all of the things that I know we need a priority. Food is probably our biggest issue right now. I think that we're going to have a serious food shortage. I mean, we have some of our larger organizations that distribute via pantries and buy wholesale, now competing with larger companies and corporations and getting outbidded on food. And so things are getting more and more expensive. And I'm very, very worried about our low-income families and our seniors and making sure that we have our schools up and running and our senior centers up and running. Community-based organizations are stretched very, very thin. And they they're worried about deliverables in their contracts, and so they're doing their best to make it work. And I just want to thank everyone who has been helpful and supportive. And with that, I'm just going to take questions. I think that's enough.
All right, thanks, Carlina. First question comes from Olympia Kazi.
Hi, Carlina. So, you know, as head of the hospitals committee, you have such a difficult position right now. Unfortunately, what we see right now, we're already at 14,000 cases. You remember that they were like, they didn't want to close the public schools, etc. Half of my family is in Italy right now, and the other half is in Greece, as you know. So from the lessons that we learned from there, there is a lot that we need to bear in mind. And I'm wondering whether you have already started looking at the possibility of following Italy and France and asking private healthcare facilities that may be needed very soon, because the peak is far. It's 10, 20 days away from here, and we're already at 14,000 people. It's going to be tough choices for many. And so if there is any private facilities that need to be used for ventilators and treatment, if you can, at your capacity, you should do it. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I think we're all tired and we're all sad, and it is okay. So they absolutely have to step up. I think most of them are trying to, they must double their beds. I also think that we're going to be looking at unconventional spaces to expand the bed capacity. I think that we are going to have to essentially look at private open spaces to put field hospitals. FEMA sent an additional 5 tents along with supplies. You know, not all of them are necessarily compatible, but we also have to support the clinics and the people that are providing hyperlocal services. I mean, from the Dr. Velasquez on Houston Street to the Ryan Ninas of the world, they're also out of masks. They're also out of PPE. And I'm looking, larger donations go to the Office of Emergency Management headquarters in downtown Brooklyn. But as I'm getting smaller donations, you know, I'm just trying to make sure that they are taking care of our neighbors who aren't necessarily going to go to the hospital. I mean, you shouldn't go to the hospital, right? You're supposed to stay home. And I think that people are not respecting that message. And that is a part that I think frustrates me and angers us the most. That, you know, today I had to take a bike ride to run an errand for one of my neighbors. And, you know, there are still people outside congregating. It is incredibly frustrating. And, you know, as I look at the hospital system and what it's going through, already facing that deficit, it is going to take some serious federal intervention that should have been here weeks and weeks ago. We knew this for weeks, and to be honest, the federal government it continues to fail us every single minute that help has not arrived. So it's emotional, and all the doctors and nurses that text me, and the CEOs of Mount Sinai and Northwell and Presbyterian, and as I get the stories of people who are, you know, they're worried about giving birth and their partners being banned from the room. These are stories that I'm constantly hearing. So, you know, we're trying our best, and we absolutely expect private institutions to do their part, and we plan to hold them accountable. And they know this is an all hands on deck situation. This is going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. There is no doubt. You've already seen it. Sorry, didn't mean to go on. I know there's.
Carla, we actually have a number of questions for you. So
okay.
The next one's going to be.
I'm just a humble councilwoman, but okay.
The next one's going to be coming from our board chair, Alicia.
Hey, Carlina, how are you? Thank you so much for the hard work that you have been doing. I just wanted to just say that we are dealing with so much more than what everyone is aware of. Coming from the inside of school foods, and just making sure that people are aware that they're also frontline workers working in these kitchens. Many of our workers are getting sick. We don't have protective gear. As they open and close these doors, we're exposed, and no one is talking about that. Quite a few of the workers have had to call out sick, And in doing that, many of them are being told if you call out sick, you have to have a doctor's note. And a lot of the doctors in the area are not providing doctor's letters. They're saying, well, we can't provide you with a letter if you haven't been tested yet. So what do we do with situations like that? Because you have clinics like Patanzas and Ryan Nina, and Dr. Velasquez is not even there. He's quarantined. So I have a couple of workers that have already reached out to me, and they basically said to me, so what are we supposed to do when we work for the city and the city is telling us we have to have doctor's notes in order to be out of work? But yet, if we display symptoms, we can't get a note.
You know, that is because the people that I have spoken to, and thank you so much for your work. I think that, you know, for all of our like DOE and employees who are going in and still working every single day from 7:30 to 1:30, who are actually interacting with families and students constantly. All of these frontline are essential workers, the grocery store workers who don't have the equipment as well. In terms of being able to call out sick, I mean, that is your right. And if there is this weird kind of, a cycle that they're putting you through that doesn't allow you to take care of yourself, that's completely unacceptable. So let me just look into why they would do that for you. And Alicia, if you could follow up with me, even via text, or if you could call me and let me know kind of what happened, and I won't have to name anyone, but I could say this is happening right now. And if someone isn't feeling well, they have to stay home because they could spread the disease. Everyone knows this is highly infectious, highly contagious. And you can easily get handfuls of people sick just by being close to them. So thank you for letting me know of the issue, and I will bring it up. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Carlina.
Thank you, Carlina. Before we move on to our next question, I just want to remind people that questions during this section are reserved for community board members. So there are some people raising their hand that are not community board members. So I will be just lowering your hands internally. If you want, you can use the chat function and send your question to Carlina that way, or you can send it to me and I'll make sure to get it to her. The next question is going to come from Deborah Jeffries.
Hi, thank you, Carlina. So I know that given the numbers that are coming out here in the city and in the state, my question is this. So I know that there's conversation about trying to mobilize Javits Center and large-scale centers to create beds for folks who are in need of treatment and services. I guess I want to try to figure out what we can do as a community board to support using facilities like the former Rivington House to be able to get, there's a couple hundred beds that can be done. It probably will take less time to be able to mobilize that space. And from my understanding from a couple of press reports that I've read, that Mount Sinai Beth Israel is amenable to using that. So what can we do to help get a couple hundred beds online more quickly than trying to do 1,000 beds at Javits or a ship that's coming in from wherever?
And she's referring to the Comfort, the USNS Comfort, which is the U.S. naval ship that has 1,000 beds and supplies on it that we're very excited about. It does not get here until April, but at least it's on the way. So all of these spaces that people have recommended, I want you to know that we have sent them to the mayor and the governor. Everything from Rivington House to the Mount Sinai Beth Israel buildings that are there, to large gymnasiums, to even just open fields that we could potentially put a tent, which is what they're doing outside of many hospitals. They really want to keep these alternative locations as close to hospitals as possible. We're actually pretty close. So I've given all of these suggestions to the mayor and the governor's office. Please feel free to send them to district2@council.nyc.gov. Even if you think, oh, they probably thought of that already, it's okay. Just send it to us anyway. It cannot hurt.
And as a follow-up, what can we as a community board do to help support trying to gather as much resource as we can to help create spaces for treatment?
Well, that's a great question, and it's really nice to hear that. What we can do to try to is just collecting the information. Even if you know, we have gotten a lot of inquiries. Like I know someone who knows someone who has a building, And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. We try to follow up on every inquiry we get, even when someone knows someone who has a factory in China. Like I've actually called people and said, how is this connection? Is it something worthwhile? I will send it to OEM. I will send it to the mayor's office. So if you have recommendations, great. If you have lines to getting supplies, I mean, the mayor's office and the governor's office, I think are trying their best. We need thousands and thousands of everything. As for what maybe you can do, we do have volunteer opportunities. We are calling many, many people who we know don't necessarily have internet, who aren't watching the news as often, and quite frankly, maybe watching Fox News isn't the best idea right now. So we're just making sure that people understand where they can go and get a meal. If you're interested in volunteering, you could reach out to Ivy Rosado, that's iRosado at council.nyc.gov. There are also some people are taking volunteers at some of the larger organizations that distribute meals to go, like God's Love We Deliver. But we can connect you to those opportunities as well. That's pretty much supporting our local cultural institutions. If you want to do that, our local businesses, if you can, and just letting us know if you have a line to resources, and we'll try to really coordinate interagency wise. Has the mayor's office and the governor's office been kind of working in tandem? Are they always on the same page? No, you can see that clearly. But the council is trying to do what they can to organize on a very, very hyper-local level, and also working on whatever we can do legislatively to support the city. I mean, we put out a $12 billion plan. We would love for the federal government to pay for it. That's to help small businesses and create a universal based income on a hyper-local level. But if the federal government's not going to pay $12 billion, maybe we can issue bonds. It's not the same economy post 9/11. And so that same maybe act of patriotism in buying bonds and funding some of that relief is going to be different. But we really feel like it's our obligation to think of how we're going to be able to send cash into people's pockets, which is what they're going to need after this. Because it's a public health crisis and an economic crisis all rolled into one. And we are drastically behind in where we need to be to stop the spread.
All right, Carlina, we've got 4 more questions for you. So I'm going to ask people asking those questions to be as brief as possible. And I'm going to cut it off after these 4. The 4 are Susan Stetzer, Kay Webster, Michael Perlis, and Dominic Berg. So we're going to start with Susan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay, Carlina, thank you for following up to stop the cleanup that was scheduled for a homeless encampment. I'd like to know, what is the status? Is this continuing? And also there are groups of homeless people who, large groups who, or I won't say large groups, but certainly 6, 7, 8 that are in close proximity and nothing seems to be happening. And my last part is, how is it that DHS is able to put out a printed notice to these homeless people saying you will be asked to move when it is illegal to do that?
So thank you, Susan, for your question. So based on your guidance and recommendations, I have contacted NYPD and DHS to whether it's stopping some of the meal distribution or the cleanups. I've really tried to let them know what's doing more harm than good. There was a call with Commissioner Banks, I believe it was Friday, when I tried to bring this up. They said they would follow up with me. As you probably have heard, the shelters are full. People are looking actually for alternative sites to do drop-in centers because they don't have the capacity in some of the existing facilities. And as I mentioned, I was outside earlier on my bike running an errand, and I did see the groups of homeless individuals. Maybe they're under a scaffold, maybe they were by the park. I don't remember, but they're really, I don't think, at least not that I've heard, a real plan for outreach. I mean, Commissioner Banks is really doing his best, but I don't really have I can't give you a direct answer right now, Susan, because I haven't received one from DHS and HRA. I just know that how I contact my the individuals at these agencies to let them know what our problems are. You know, they're pretty much being very reactive. There have been many announcements and few actual things implemented on the city level. So I'll follow up with you and try to figure out, maybe we can just give them some recommendations. And I hope you can help me with that, because I need to tell them like what I need and what to do. And sometimes we just have to go above the mayor's head and go straight to the governor's office, because they're not being the most responsive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Kay Webster, you're up next.
Hi, thanks, Carlina. Really appreciate everything you're doing. I guess my main question is, do you know what the hospital capacity is in New York City right now? That's my first question. My second observation is there's a lot of luxury housing with construction workers going on all over. I'm sure you've heard this. I'm wondering if we could ask those construction workers and those unions and those luxury developers if they would offer their employees in this crisis to help us build these sites that we need, like Rivington House, but I'm sure there are other ones. And then lastly, I just want to say on the last bit, we've posted signs in our park wherever we know homeless people congregate, with just basic information, because some of them are undocumented, they don't go to shelters. So I think it's time a little bit for big asks from folks who could come through, and also for us, we can do our own guerrilla postings, you know, so that at least people are informed. Thank you.
So, so thank you for your question. I just realized I was just like trying to look at the chat, for example. Anyway, I'm trying not to get caught up in that. But okay, let me answer your question. So I can tell you about how many staff beds are available right now, which are beds that are open with the staff to assist the patient. And then about how many ICU beds are available. There's only about 4,000 staff beds available. I mean, ICU beds, a little over 300. We're nowhere at the number that we're going to need. We're nowhere at the number that we are going to need in the next couple days. That's data that I've kind of requested across all hospitals. And so that is, you know, that's a very, very big challenge. The hospital beds are a very big challenge. And in terms of what you're mentioning about construction. So we have called for an end to non-essential construction. The speaker actually has been very, very vocal on that. The mayor does not want to, he's not interested in actually limiting non-essential construction. I think that not only could those workers be, you know, coordinated to do an effort of actually constructing like tents and things that we need to create these hospitals, but if not, they also have a ton of protective equipment that I think that our hospitals can use. So I reached out to multiple unions about this and said, if you have just extra equipment, can you please send it to the hospitals? I haven't really heard back, and construction continues. I could tell you that on my block, I've actually funded 3 projects on my block, 2 affordable housing construction projects, and then there's 1 supportive housing building coming down, and then and the luxury one. Everything is going. Everything is going. And I have my own definition for essential construction. I do think affordable housing is essential, but as you can see all over the city, purely luxury development is going on, and to me, the mayor has no interest in stopping any of this. So I think that's a very big problem. Especially, I think the city had a very good article published today about how these day workers, which by the way, they're part of the gig economy and they have no security financially, they do not want to go to these construction sites, but they are forced to because they need the money and because they just haven't been told to go home. So what do? You want to feed your family. I'll try to get you more information about the beds, but that's pretty much what I have. It's pretty bad.
Thank you.
It looks like one of our questions dropped off, so our last question for you, Carlina, is coming from Dominic Berg.
Hey there, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, so I just want to follow up on Alicia's point before. I posted in the chat, I posted a link to a form doctor's note. I think that was put up by DOHMH because they now realize that people are not going to be able to get tested, but they could still be sick. So that could be helpful for a lot of people. However, obviously a lot of people are not going to know that that note is there and won't know to use it. So one thing, Carlene, I was thinking, you know, it may be worth it to look at whether or not the city would just grant sick leave to people no matter what during this period. You know, right now, as a city worker, I can get 2 weeks not deducted from my leave, but because everything's so complicated and trying to prove it, it may just be better to have a blanket. Any sick leave is not going to be deducted from your regular leave right now. That's just an idea that I had.
I think an expansion of paid sick leave and family and medical coverage is absolutely essential. I also think that the universal based income, and we can kind of debate over whether we put an income limit on that. I just think it's going to be essential for individuals. I think you're right about granting sick leave. It is, again, I've called for it. The speaker has called for it. We are waiting to hear back from, I guess, leadership at the top. And I just, you know, there's something in the chat here. Heidi, I just want to thank you for bringing up laptops and Wi-Fi for our children in the shelter system. Today, this is why I was helping an organization give out laptops. It's because, you know, for our low-income families, our families in the shelter system who don't have access, I'm really, really trying to be responsive to that. We just generally have a broadband issue. This is one problem with the census. I think it's like 29% of New York City households don't have access to internet. So, you know, the field operation was critical. And again, that's been delayed 2 weeks, but I'm asking for a postponement indefinitely. You know, PS 188 is a school that was open for meals. It's been closed. Now the distribution sites are very limited. I have been checking in with the chancellor to make sure that we're not, I understand we have to streamline things, but he says that our district is served meals wise. I have people that disagree with that. So if you do see things, again, I'm always open to feedback and notes and constructive criticism. I'm really trying to stay on top of everything. And I really thank everyone for kind of just bringing up things that we have maybe been working on, but we haven't been able to really relay. So I'm going to take a good look at these comments is what I'm saying.
Thanks,
It was
Carly.
one more, okay.
Yeah, no, so that was our last question. We're going to cut off the questions for you for now so that we can keep moving on. I will say that we are going to be posting a lot of the written reports that the electeds are providing to the office will be posted on our website tomorrow. So keep that in mind as well. But we are going to move on. I don't think there's actually any more elected officials on the call. So what I'm going to do is now move to the representatives for the electeds that weren't able to be on the call. If you're a rep who's elected was on the call, I'm not going to call on you unless you need me to for some reason. But I'm considering that since your rep was on the call, we were told everything we needed to know from your rep. So we will just hear from the reps whose electeds were not on the call. So I don't know if Lila from the Public Advocate's Office is on the call. Oh, I see Philip is. All right, Philip, go ahead. Philip, go ahead.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. And can everyone, just want to make sure as I have notes here, can everyone also see me at this moment in time?
We can see you, but you're frozen. Well, now we can see you.
Okay, wonderful. I'll be brief. This is a hell of a time to have an introduction to the board. I'm the Manhattan Borough Advocate for the New York City Public Advocate's Office, Manhattan born and raised. And I work with community organizer Lila Mejia, who also lives on the Lower East Side and was in the Bowery mission with her last week, volunteering around food in the Lower East Side. Very touched by what's going on and the participation in this board. And I will make a commitment to make sure that at least I'll try to do my best to get the public advocate to see if he can join one of the board meetings. And also want to give a shout out to all of the electeds who, some of whom I know personally or I've met over time recently, to City Councilwoman Rivera, who we're working closely with her office and her chief of staff. talking to the hospitals, checking in with them, getting updates so that we can reinforce the messaging. The public advocate, Jemani Williams, can reinforce the messaging around telehealth, staying inside if you have symptoms, not going and overwhelming. I'm not sure how you can see me, what I look like, so please bar this. But making sure that the messaging is out there to the public around what they should be doing at this moment in time, because as everyone has heard on this call, not to overwhelm the hospital system that is already strapped with PPE, et cetera. So shout out to the councilwoman, to Mr. Epstein, Ms. Glick, and all of the electeds that are doing an amazing job. I've personally checked in with many of the city council chief of staffs, and we're seeing what's going on all throughout Manhattan. And while it's really disheartening and challenging, our office is very heartened as we've seen the borough president with the Fresh Direct initiative. We've seen the calling the seniors, et cetera, and that's really exemplified by the community that's at Lower East Side. A couple of things out of the public advocate's office I think is important. You can see the public advocate address the city on his Facebook or his Instagram. If you look up Jemani D. Williams, you'll find our page, and the public advocate is speaking once or twice a day. Our office was working with the borough presidents to push the shelter in place early to make sure, following the governor's lead, and even trying to push the governor to really hold true and sheltering in place, understanding to flatten the curve and promoting social distancing. We did have a webinar that's happening right now at the same time as the community board is bins and in jails. So that is a major thing that the public advocate's also been publicly discussing and putting out there and pushing for. It's also pushing and supporting the rent moratorium, because we understand for everyday working people, the issues that have been on this call. The public advocate is a big proponent in supporting people like Harvey Epstein, et cetera, on that basic on element, and just closing ending the Department of Buildings and the construction is some of the things that the public advocate's office and Jemani D. Williams has really been advocating. There's a number of things that our deputy public advocates are doing, but as we gather and move into this next month, I will make sure that I have some reports from our different deputy public advocates that are relative to the community to share with you all. And if you have questions, please reach out. I will share my information with CB3 afterwards as well. So you have Lila Mejia, the community organizer from the Lower East Side. You have me, the Manhattan Borough Advocate, Philip Ellison, willing to talk, take questions. I'm really, as a native Manhattan person and hearing everything that's going on, it is very challenging because I'm seeing a lot of the pain, but if our office can be helpful in collaborating or championing anything that is meaningful to the community, we are very committed to do so.
Thank you very much, Philip. Appreciate it. Are there any questions for the Public Advocate's Office before we move on? Michael Stinson,
Yes,
you ready for us?
I'm ready for you. Hi, everybody. I know we're all disappointed we couldn't be in PS20's auditorium with those very comfortable seats tonight, but I just have a couple quick announcements on behalf of the Comptroller's Office. Last week, we were hearing we got a lot of calls from nonprofits that they're scared to death right now because they feel like they're losing all their money. They feel like they're not going to be able to survive even after this coronavirus goes away. So there are certain requirements in the city contracts that may no longer be achievable because of this virus, due to decreasing client participation, program suspensions, and other factors that are beyond the control of these nonprofits. So we sent a letter to City Hall last week, and I'll send this letter to your board, asking that nonprofits be held harmless for miscontract deliverables that are directly attributable to COVID-19, and that immediate attention be paid to the fiscal stability of the sector. I know the council member is also working very hard on this, and she mentioned that during her report. So we're happy. I think of Eric first off in this, Eric Diaz, but if you have any contracts that are about to be with our office, feel free to reach out to us. We are still working at home. We are registering contracts. We are accepting claims. Our office has not stopped. Scott, he checks in with us every single day to make sure that we're doing our job and that people know about what we're doing. And just yesterday, I'll also send this over. We released a new, an updated forecast for tax revenue losses for New York City. And again, the coronavirus is impacting our economy, as we know, through CNN and every other major news network. But our fiscal year forecast for 2021 is now 4.8 billion to 6.1 billion in total loss for tax revenues. So this is a huge loss for New York City, and it's a huge impact on our economy. It's going to take a while to recover from this, but again, unlike the president, the most important thing for us is the health of New York City residents and the world's residents. So we're going to renew our call for immediate mandatory city agency savings program and for fiscal relief from the state and local governments and the federal stimulus bill, including direct cash assistance and paid sick leave. So I have a couple other things, but they were touched on. I'll send them over as part of the board report so you don't have to listen to me anymore tonight.
Thanks, Michael. Are there any questions for the Controller's Office? All right, we're going to move to Nydia Velasquez's office. Ling Chua, I'm going to see if I can find you. There you are. All right. We can hear you. Go ahead. Ling?
To get my camera on my computer working. I'm dialing on the phone. Hi everyone. Thanks. I'm very touched by the enthusiasm and how this community has worked together to pass this critical time. As someone, as somebody says, sometimes in a crisis, we see people's true character. And I have to admit that this week and last week, I have, through my work with the community, I've been very touched by how a lot of ordinary people stepping up and taking up heroic roles to volunteer and to help those in need. Just like probably all the elected office right now have been connecting with groups of volunteers, help connect volunteers to senior centers and help facilitate mask and PPE donations. And my office is not an exception, just like Carlina said. We have also been in touch. One of the bottleneck is getting, there are masks. Right now, China is the biggest producer, and in fact, during their crisis, they boost a lot of manufacturers there boost the mask production. Like even car makers there are making masks now. And then the problem of and then with their pandemic getting under control, they do have the capacity to send masks to the United States, but one of the bottlenecks is the certification, because our certification system and their certification system is slightly different, and only factories, mask factories who were already producing masks before the pandemic that already had the FDA approval could export here. A lot of the production capacity they have over there were boosted, like just in the recent months, like car makers, clothing factories making the mask, and those do not have FDA certification, and so there's a problem. And we have been connecting with makers, I guess, talking to everybody, and to see how we can get around that. But in the meanwhile, we have in our district, not just Lower East Side and Brooklyn and Queens and Lower East Side, there are ordinary citizens stepping up and donating masks. And we have been connecting them with hospitals, some of the hardest hit hospitals. There was, and I guess all I gotta say is a lot of those people they are hard. Some of the donors are lost the job themselves. They're hard hit by the virus, but they're stepping up to volunteer, to donate whatever they could find. And in the meanwhile, and business people who's in touch with with the Congresswoman's office to see whatever means that they could bring more masks into the country. We're not only lacking, our hospitals not only lacking N95, even regular surgical masks. There's a big lack for it too. And mask aside, the Congresswoman, everyone probably knows, the House and the Senate are in negotiation on to get the deal passed on coronavirus aid package. The reason why the Democrats voted down, we were against the version proposed by the Republicans, is it doesn't take care of the middle class and the working class enough, and the House is working on a more fair version. They will review it soon, a more fair version to bring to the Americans. And yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Nydia Velasquez's office? All right, I don't think there's anybody on from Carolyn Maloney's office. If so, if you can use the raise hands function. So we're going to skip to Shivani from Yulin News office.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So first of all, the biggest thing is that Yulin introduced the legislation for a 90-day rent freeze. She is also releasing tomorrow an amendment to the bill, which works to better protect small landlords and small businesses in Chinatown. So keep a lookout for that. Additionally, she has been active in sending Governor Cuomo letters. The first one is for to provide at-home testing kits. This would really lessen the risk to healthcare workers as well as the people taking the test if they were immunocompromised or had other health risks that wouldn't be safe to like be going into a hospital or something like that. She also sent a letter to Governor Cuomo asking for priority testing for 9/11 survivors and responders. Oftentimes 9/11 responders have lung disease or respiratory illnesses that are a pre-existing condition when considering COVID-19. So that is really key, as well as removing the waitlist time for 9/11 healthcare programs, which would ensure that everybody has the insurance before they get hit with the crisis. Hopefully they don't, but if they do. She also sent a letter to the NYCHA CEO on cleaning protocols. NYCHA has been sending out updates on their cleaning protocols and how that's changing in the face of COVID-19, but the residents still haven't really seen it. So we are continuing to push for that and ensuring that NYCHA residents are clean and disinfected so that the virus does not spread easily there. That was really quick, but I think that was our basic update. Also, one more thing. We have been sending out a daily newsletter, which compiles information from the governor's office, from the mayor's office, anything else that's relevant. It can be like very exhausting and time consuming to try to follow along with every single thing going on because it's all moving so fast. So we've been sending out those newsletters. I will put my email in like the chat on the side here. And if anyone wants to subscribe who hasn't subscribed, you can shoot me an email and I will make sure that you are on that list.
All right, thanks, Shivani. We actually have a couple of questions. First one is from Jackie Wong.
Hi, thank you so much for the update. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on the protections for the small properties owners in Chinatown. What's that about? Can you share a little bit more information on that?
At this moment, I can't actually because her amendment is coming out tomorrow. And so once that is fully finalized and public, then we definitely can. But I'm so sorry at this moment, that's the only information I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shivani. I think our next question is from Mei Lee, but I believe that it's actually for Nydia Velasquez's office. So Ling, I think you're still on the call, Ling. Mei, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, yes.
So my question was regarding the assistance bill that was passed at the House, but there were some immigrant groups that were excluded from it, and I think there had been a letter about it sent out to re-include them back. So are you aware of that, or yeah, are you aware of that,
Ling Shah, that question is for you.
Ling Shah?
She's still on the call and she's unmuted, so
Okay.
she might not have been listening closely though. So May, I would suggest, why don't you reach out to them privately with an email or something?
Sure.
Okay. All right, thanks, Shivani. So we are now going to move on to Marion from Councilmember Chin's office.
Hi, everybody. Marion here. Hope you're all safe and well. Sorry that Councilmember Chin cannot make it. I think once we all as an office get Zoom together, she will be part of future meetings. So it's taken a little time. But our office is still open. Both our legislative and district office lines can be routed to a living person. So our 212-788 number and our 212-587 number are still active. Margaret is continuing to aggressively promote social distancing and social isolation, and we are discouraging people from seeking testing or visiting the ER so as not to overload the healthcare system unless you have serious symptoms or over 50 years old. And I know that a lot of the offices have been sharing agency updates. We've also been trying to do our best to compile agency updates on our newsletter and our website. But from our end, I just want to make sure that you all get the latest on the senior services front, with Margaret being chair of the Committee on Aging. So over the last few weeks, we've been getting questions and concerns from providers on the ground. You know, these are the folks who are interacting every single day with the most high-risk populations to COVID, but many of them are in desperate shortage of supplies. Hand sanitizers, PPE, gloves, and even to-go boxes, since all of the senior centers are now being asked to provide to-go meals to all seniors who come in every single day. So last week, Margaret sent a letter to the mayor and the Department for the Aging to provide emergency supplies and PPE to these folks, reimburse them, because a lot of them are dipping into their own already very scarce budgets to make amends, and also not penalize service providers if they don't meet contract deliverables. I know that last week, the Mayor's Office of Contract Services sent a system-wide letter to all providers about their leniency on meeting any deliverables, utilization rates, as well as a commitment to provide reimbursement. And I'm happy to share that letter with anybody here who is working very closely with a CBO that is concerned. So senior centers, we all know that they're closed to all programs except for food pickup and delivery. Seniors can pick up any meals at this time at any senior center that's closest to them. Shout out to the borough president who compiled a really handy Manhattan list of all senior center locations and their current hours. And as the borough president alluded to earlier, DFTA just piloted a new program to centralize their meal deliveries. I think this is something that they want to transition towards, just to make it easier, more efficient, and safer for seniors to get access to their food. So this is just a pilot right now with only a few centers in each borough that are opted in, who have that kind of capacity, who have the refrigerators to keep the food, for example, and the vans. I know that Bronx as a borough started yesterday, Manhattan is today, and all of the other boroughs are going to be piloted tomorrow. So we are right now trying to get more information on how that's going, you know, whether seniors can be enrolled. As the borough president mentioned, right now it's focused on the seniors who are currently clients at these senior centers. We're also curious about whether or not there's going to be protocol for safe delivery in residential buildings. We've also had a few seniors in senior buildings ask for that sort of ask for that guidance, and some of them are not even comfortable with going down the stairs or going down the elevator to pick up their food. So we're asking for clear-cut guidance from DFTA on that. And if we can do it no contact, then we certainly should. But just to clarify, grab and go meals at all senior centers while this pilot is going on is still continuing. So if seniors are worried, hey, I'm not part of any senior center, they can still grab a meal at a senior center that's closest to them. So separate from DFTA's program, we just shared that the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission is currently recruiting TLC drivers to deliver food to seniors. So this is different to offset lost revenue from missed trips. And the city will also pay those drivers $15 an hour and reimburse fully for gas, tolls, and mileage. So it is first come in, first serve, but we are aggressively distributing that opportunity. And on the small business relief front, we're working with community organizations to get the word out and help businesses apply for the 2 small business relief programs that SBS has, the New York City Employee Retention Grant Program, specifically for businesses with 4 or fewer employees, and the New York City Small Business Continuity Loan Fund, which is a zero-interest loan for businesses who are experiencing a decline in sales of 25%, and more. But that application is not yet up. A pre-application to put in your information is online on SBS's website. We're also part of a council-wide push to expand financial relief to more kinds of businesses. So the sole proprietors, the gig economy workers, the street vendors who normally do not qualify for a lot of these programs. We are continuing to urge the mayor to announce more relief programs to fit them. And just lastly, putting my budget director hat on, the budget cycle is still ongoing. Deadlines remain. The only change right now is in light of circumstances. We've gotten word from OMB that the deadline for non-city capital applications for council members specifically has been delayed. It was originally March 24th today, but now it will be April 1st at 5 p.m. Sadly, the Borough President's deadline has already passed, but if there are any non-city organizations, nonprofits that are interested in getting funding from the City Council, the deadline is now April 1st at 5 p.m., but that is the last deadline. We've been hearing word that PEGS may be part of the conversation coming down for fiscal year 21 negotiations, which we're really worried by. So these are programs to eliminate grad gap procedures, basically, equivalent to potential cuts to agencies. So we are keeping an eye out on that. Margaret, as part of the budget negotiating team, will be fighting against that. I think what all these providers need right now is just reassurance that they will be made whole. And even more than that, cash advances and commitments that, contracts that they were promised for fiscal year 20 or even fiscal year 2019, that funding will be dispersed to them as soon as possible.
Thank you, Marian. We have a couple of questions for you. The first one's going to be coming from Eric Diaz.
Hey.
Hi, Marian. It's good to see you. I wanted to ask about the DFTA pilot program. And just again, if you could repeat briefly about that program. Is it to centralize all locations for all senior centers receiving meals, or is it to centralize senior centers to log on for seniors to find meals?
So the pilot program is separate from the grab and go meals program that DFTA is currently mandating all providers to do. We've only gotten just really rudimentary information from DFTA because they're just starting this week. It was only a few centers that have opted in that DFTA has determined has the capacity to do home delivery. So if you were not part of, I know JASA is part of it in the Bronx. We're trying to get a full list of the senior centers that are doing this. So we'll share that list with you. Right now, there aren't any plans to expand that program even more because I think we're just waiting to see how it goes. So we'll let you know how it goes when we get that data and update.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is coming from Susan Stetzer.
Okay, thank you. Did you say the PEGs are for the current fiscal year?
Fiscal year 21. There is a possibility. So not current fiscal year.
Okay, and should we assume the community boards are going to be included in that?
I think just right now they're whisperings. And, once we get more of a clear idea, right now, all of the budget hearings, I think if there was any, clear-cut plan being articulated by the administration, you'd be hearing them at the budget hearings. But I think we're just taking this one day at a time. Once we get more information, we'll definitely keep you up to date.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marion. Appreciate it. All right, so that concludes the reports from the elected officials. It's a long one. I am going to read now another piece of public testimony that had come in that was not forwarded to me prior to reading the other two. So I just want to give this third person their fair shot. So this public testimony comes from Tommy Loeb. And it says, on November 12th, Councilmember Rivera, along with Mayor de Blasio, announced an agreement on a wide range of issues regarding the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, including interim storm protection. It is now 4 months since this agreement was reached. From the release, New York City Emergency Management, in coordination with the Mayor's Office of Resiliency, will conduct further feasibility evaluation to understand whether there is potential for interim flood protection measures along the project area. The results of the analysis will be shared with the community. That was a quote from the press release. The community has seen no evidence that such a study is actually taking place. I hope they are not proceeding with conclusions without input from the local community who actually experienced Sandy and witnessed the destruction. We have local knowledge that would be critical to such a study. I would like to remind you that the outside expert consultant hired by Borough President Brewer and Councilmember Rivera recommended interim flood protection in his final report. It is up to Community Board 3 to make the city and our local elected officials live up to this commitment and hold a public session where they update their work and get input from the local community. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So again, that was another piece of public testimony that should have been read earlier this evening, but came in a little bit late to me. I will copy and paste that in the comments as well as we are proceeding to roll call. So I am going to unmute everybody right now. You should have the ability to mute and unmute yourselves once I do that. So if you don't need to participate in roll call, you can just mute yourself.
Here, yes. Did you get my vote?
Louder?
Here, yes.
Okay, 1 second.
I'm on the phone.
Hold on.
I'm on the phone.
I am going to mute again, and you guys unmute yourself.
Okay, Yaron Altman.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Jesse Beck.
Yes.
Dominic Berg.
Yes.
Lee Berman.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry for the back and forth, folks. I gotta click in and out of Windows in order to unmute myself. Okay. Carlin Chan. Carlin Chan. Jonathan Chu. David Crane.
Eric, Carlin is still on the call, but for some reason we cannot hear him, but I can see him giving the thumbs up.
Okay, got it. David Crane.
He's there. I don't know why he's not answering.
It's not working. Maybe it's on this. Yes?
Got you, David. All right.
Okay.
Felicia Cruikshank. Eric Diaz, yes. Alistar Economakis.
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Thank you.
Yes, we got you. Shirley Fennessy.
Yes.
Ryan Gillum.
Yes.
Deborah Glass.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt. Herman. Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Linda Jones.
Yes.
Valentina Jones.
Yes.
Tatiana Jorio.
Yes.
Megan Joy. Megan Joy.
Sorry, yes. Can you hear me?
Got you.
Okay, cool.
Got you. Lisa Kaplan.
Yes.
It's a pain in the butt. All right. Olympia Kazi.
Yes.
Joseph Kearns.
Yes.
Michelle Coopersmith.
Yes.
May Lee.
Yes.
Alicia Lewis Coleman.
Yes.
Got you. Ellen Liu.
Yes.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Alexandra Militano. Alexandra Militano.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Got you. Michael Perlis.
Yes.
Okay. Paul Rangel.
He's not here.
Paul Rangel's not in. Okay. Carolyn Ratcliffe. Carolyn Ratcliffe.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Got you, Carolyn. Okay. Damaris Reyes. Damaris Reyes.
Go ahead, Damaris.
Yes.
Got you. Richard Ropiak. Richard Ropiak. Thomas Rosa.
Yes.
Robin Chattel.
Yes.
Heidi Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay. Larissa Scheinberg.
Larissa Scheinberg, Clint Smeltzer, Clint,
Hi, this is Larissa. I couldn't unmute myself. I'm so sorry, but I'm here. Yes.
got you. Okay. Anisha Stephen,
Yes.
got you. Sandra Strother,
Yes.
okay. Josephine Velez,
Yes.
okay. Rodney Washington, Rodney Washington,
Rodney, you're on.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Eric?
Gotcha.
got you. Yes. Clint,
Eric, yeah, I was here. I think I actually had muted myself twice because I unmuted on the screen, but I'm here.
got you. Okay. Kathleen Webster,
Here. Yep.
and got you. And then Jackie Wong.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Eric. So I am going to stay on running the technical side of the meeting, but I'm passing the moderating the meeting off to Alicia now.
Oh, okay. Wow. This has been a very long first part of the meeting. We're already 2 hours in, right? But thank you all for coming out tonight and online as we are getting used to this new technical type of communication for our board. And I just want to give a quick personal thanks to Susan and the office staff and Clint and Michael. They have really been stepping up and really helping out a lot with this technical stuff, learning how to do Zoom. And it's all new to me. I did Zoom on church on Sunday. That was very interesting. So it's a whole new way of communication. Really quickly, just thank you all for doing your part, for staying indoors during these times, these uncertain times that we're dealing with. I would like to encourage you all to take care of yourselves and take care of the elders. Many of them are home alone, and many of them are shut in and are not really knowing what to do and don't really have family around them. Because for the most part, no one can really go to their apartments, but we can all stay in contact. If you have an email or if you have a phone number of a neighbor, you could still knock on the door and just say, I'm just checking in on you. That's all you have to say. You don't have to, stay there for a long period of time because they don't want us going into close proximity of people. Also, if there are any single mothers or single fathers that are struggling with having their children home all day long, this is a hardship for many people. They're not able to go out and get food, get groceries, and also those school foods, those meals that they're offering. Any adult can go and get those meals and bring them to a family in need. If you know someone that can't get out, you could definitely do that. You don't even have to give the family's name. You could just say, I'm picking up for a child or two. So be mindful of that. Please check on the community board website on a regular basis. Check your emails. I'm thinking that maybe we have a few board members that did not know how to get on Zoom or don't have technical savvy in order to do this. So maybe we can check in with those few people that didn't get on. I know maybe one person or two people can have access to, this type of technology and just maybe were unavailable. I've assigned Clint to be our tech chair, as they say. He's going to be dealing with all of this technical stuff, and he'll assign one or two other people to help him out as he needs them. So be mindful of that. If Clint asks you to help him, please step up and help him where he's going to need some support. Let's see. Also, just wanted to let everyone know, if you have any other families that are in need of food on the weekend, on Saturday, There's a church on East 11th Street, the Father's Heart Ministries. They're still providing breakfast to go, and they're having meal bags for people that are in need, or if they're just someone that you know, a family that may need something extra for extra mouths that they're having to feed in their homes, because the kids are normally at school during the daytime, so they're not used to having to feed them 3 meals per day. So that's it for me as far as that report is concerned. Now we're going to ask Susan for her district manager's report.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The office is totally closed starting this week, and all the staff is working from home. But I want to ask, if you want to leave a phone message, please leave it on the office phone, because that is sent to our email, so we'll get it by email. Please don't leave it on, well, for me, for my personal phone, because the email is just easier. We're still trying to prioritize issues as they come up. We're still learning a lot. We're making contact with all the agency liaisons so that we can continue working with them. Everyone we're working with is also working at home. DOT seems to be kind of most on the ball, has already started regular check-ins. Just want to mention the census. A couple of people have brought it up. Everybody should have completed their census form by now. If you haven't, the link to submit the form is on the community board website. You do not need a letter. You don't need a code. The only thing you need is the link and your social security number. It's going to be more important than ever with the budget cuts we're all going to be seeing. I've had one nonprofit tell me they're expecting probably 25% cuts next year. So the census funding and representation is incredibly important. All permits, I'm going to just give you some agency updates. All permits have been suspended. There are no composting drop-off sites. Those are all closed. All traffic studies are suspended because there's no traffic. Playgrounds, Parks asked me to make sure everyone knows the playgrounds are not sterilized. So when you use the playground, should be wearing gloves, and just be aware to, use sanitizer and soap when you get home. Social distancing is required on the playgrounds. It's not happening. I saw it this afternoon. People are playing team sports, which is not allowed. Rec centers are closed. All public gatherings are canceled. I was kind of surprised that there was a concert in Tompkins Square Parks on the weekend. I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday. One of the blogs picked it up. This is the reason the police are now being asked to break up groups. Community gardens are open only to members, not to the public, and at the discretion, as far as being open to their members, that is the discretion of each garden. Tomorrow, the district managers are having a Zoom meeting with the state open meeting law director and assistant director, was set up by Brad Hoylman's office and Gail Brewer's office. That's very needed. So I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of information from that. We have 2 projects that are still in the works that very much affects our board. Our 2 parks projects, the Tompkins Square one and the Brooklyn Bridge, I forget the new name, but that waterfront project will need resolutions from the community board so that they won't be delayed. I also want to mention, in the office, we had a lot of learning to do in how to use uh, how to access city websites that are generally intra-agency websites so that we can use them as tools and even for our timesheets. And I want to just give a shout out to information technology because no one ever hears or talks about Do It. One of the people we work there I call St. Joe because I say he's the most important man in my life. So I just want to be sure to thank Do It and their staff for helping us be able to continue to do our work. And that's it, unless there are questions.
So
I have a question
you
or
have
a comment.
a question from May. Go ahead, May.
So Susan, you had mentioned that this is about the census. You had mentioned the social security number. You don't need a and you shouldn't give your social security number for the census, but you're supposed to get a letter. But I think that if you don't have the letter, the letter has a PIN. But if you don't have the letter with the PIN, there's a number you can call to get a PIN.
Or you could.
So you need a PIN.
You don't need a PIN because I didn't use a PIN. I submitted it the first day. I just went online, and that's because I didn't have a PIN is probably why they asked me for my social security number.
Oh, okay.
But I did it without a PIN. So if you have a PIN, that's fine. If you want to call and get one, but it shouldn't stop anybody from filling it out because you can just use the website that's on our, the link on our website, which is what I did.
Oh, okay. Just because there were some stories, not here in our area, about scams where people were calling people, asking them to answer the census and proactively asking for their social security number. So people should be aware of that.
Right. So it would be, certainly don't give it to anybody that calls you.
Yes.
All right, thank you, May. Alicia, you're up.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? I'm sorry, bear with me. I have terrible lighting in my, where I'm at right now. Okay, so now we're going to go into the executive report. So we had this resolution for the immediate economic help for small businesses. Did everyone get an opportunity to read it? It was sent to you by Clint. So if I don't need to read it, I don't want to have to read it. But if I need to read it, I will.
There's a bunch of yeses in the comments. I can also share my screen and bring it up on the screen if you want me to.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Mike.
All right, hold on. There you go. You should be able to see it now.
Okay, so all the members of the public that are online and the elected officials, you should also be able to see it. But I guess I'll just go ahead and read it for the sake of those that didn't get a chance to look it over. So the executive committee to approve a request for immediate economic help for small businesses. Vote title, Community Board 3 request for immediate economic help for small businesses. Whereas New York City is facing health emergency unlike anything seen in over a century. Whereas measures to slow and stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus, while essential and justified, have caused significant economic hardships, whereas required aid and support programs for countless small businesses and employees will be substantial. Whereas all levels of government must work collaboratively to provide needed economic relief in the immediate, near, and long terms. Therefore, be it resolved, Community Board 3 recommends the following actions to provide immediate relief for all small businesses affected by the COVID-19 crisis. Suspension or forgiveness of all fines and associated payments for a period of 6 months, and make sure that there is no admission of helpability. Is that proper? I don't know, maybe we need to, Okay. Automatic no fee renewal of all city and state operating permits and businesses filings for this period of 6 months. Suspension of state sales tax filings for a period of 3 months. Suspension of commercial rent taxes for a period of 3 months. Immediate expansion of no interest loan program provided by the city and an increase of the loan amount up to, I thought we changed that amount to 250,000. Okay. Further be it resolved, Community Board 3 requests the City Department of Finance analyze appropriate property tax relief measures for a period of 1 year that will allow small merchants to reduce rent and operating costs while also allowing small property owners to stabilize their buildings' income streams. Further be it resolved, Community Board 3 requests the State Department of Financial Services ensure the business's interruption related to the public health emergency be considered and covered event for insurance purposes. Further be it resolved, Community Board 3 requests funding for economic and community development organizations be strengthened and maintained to ensure support services for small merchants and continuation of community-based efforts that will prepare a sustained recovery. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can manage the hands that have been raised.
Okay, go ahead.
First one is Olympia.
Okay, Olympia.
So I have two amendments. One that is simple and I have already typed it and it comes out of the recommendations that I shared earlier with you that a lot of the community development organizations that deal with small businesses have said. And that is, you can read it in the chat, I shared it. It's expanding the grants that are currently up to 4 people to up to 10 people, because most small businesses, they have part-time, several employees, so up to 10, they're still very, very small. And the second amendment that I want to offer, should I give them both together for a facility, or what do you want me to do?
I'm okay with that first amendment.
So I should go ahead and tell you what is my second idea?
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we have, if there's anyone opposed, David, I know you have your hand up. Is this about process? Do you want me to unmute you? I've unmuted.
Yeah, it's about. David.
David, I can't unmute you. You have to unmute.
Yeah, right, I understand. It's not about the process, it's about the amendment.
Okay. About what Olympia's already proposed?
Right.
Okay.
Why do we want to be so specific? And I'm going to pose this to Megan, because I oppose putting any limitation on it, such as up to 10 employees. Let them figure that out. That would be my position. But Megan, you thought this was fine?
I can address it if you want.
I'd rather hear Megan.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Megan.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're asking why I'm okay with the limit being 10?
Correct.
Well, it's better. So what they originally proposed was 1 to 4 employees, which is so few businesses. But what I heard from the borough president was that even within that group, there was in the first few days, there was over 400 applications to that particular grant. So raising it up from 4 to 10 employees opens a huge threshold, a way bigger number of businesses.
Why not just say raise it? Why say raise it to 10? I actually don't know what's wrong with the originally proposed
Because
one.
I think
I'm not sure why, since this is my amendment, I'm not allowed to explain. I'm not sure this is the proper.
You would be allowed to explain it. I just preferred hearing it from Megan, but go ahead.
I mean, usually I think in the public meetings, you're not supposed to call one person and say, why do you agree with that? It's not proper conduct, I think, David. But
Well, she is the one who accepted it, and if this is to be a friendly amendment, it has to be done without objections.
She's the chair of the committee, so it's people are going to defer to her anyway. But Olympia, why don't you make your comment about but the question seems to be, I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that it needs to be raised, but why do we need to put a number on it at all, I
So
believe?
the reason for which we need to put a number is because we don't have infinite funds. I wish we could give grants to everybody right now, right? So I think it could be incrementally. Right now, the problem is that the guidelines in order to apply for these grants are too strict and people don't qualify. They have to jump too many hoops. Some don't even apply, and that's a pity. And so we need to raise it first to 10. And if this doesn't work, maybe we can go higher. But fundamentally, I think if you just lift the cap, it would be impossible, and you wouldn't be helping the one most needed, the most needy ones.
Okay. Robin, I see you have your hand up also. Is this in relation to what Olympia has already suggested, or is it something different?
Yes, it was a question really about, I think we have an opportunity, about how do we define small businesses? And so it's very general, and I don't have an amendment, but I wanted to ask that question to the committee.
SBS has a legal definition.
Wait, one at a time, please.
One at a time.
How are we defining a small business? Because it's the same as what the Senate and Congress is going through. A small business, someone who comes with 30 employees might think that they're a small business. So I think if we're talking about our district or our community, maybe we can be more specific.
Okay, thank you, Robin. So Olympia, do you want to answer that question now?
Yes, that currently basically there is the city law that defines what is a small business. However, the Small Business Services Administration that gives these loans and gives these grants, they have their discretion to make them available to small businesses that fit to certain categories. So in this case, they're using how many employees you have. In other cases, they may use whether you are immigrant or woman-owned or whatever. But the definition of a small business exists legally. There is no discussion at the state level, and at the federal, they may be slightly different, but they have already established legislation about that.
Okay.
Can I talk about this?
Yes, please do, Megan.
I think one thing that we have to realize about these particular, so one is a grant, right? And that's to cover 40% of your payroll for small businesses with 1 to 4 employees. The other thing that they're offering is up to $75,000 no interest loan for other small businesses, even larger than that, which the application isn't even live yet. The difference in these two is that the grant money is money that the city already has secured, and it's money that's immediately available. Like these people that applied for it last week are already getting funds this week to retain their employees. And I agree with Olympia, it's a very limited fund. I would like to say, yes, we can open it up to businesses that have up to 10 employees, but I don't think the city has the funds for it. They're going to have to find it. And it's something that's very time sensitive. So just putting a no threshold on it, saying like any businesses, I don't agree with, but I still think it's kind of a pipe dream, but I'm willing to go up to, I'm okay with the amendment to say up to 10 employees.
Okay. So any other discussion that anybody wants to have on this one particular amendment? Hearing none, is everyone okay with this amendment? If you're, the easiest way to do that is if you're opposed, raise your hand. If I don't see any hands raised, I'm going to assume everyone's okay with it. All right, there are no hands being raised, so this amendment is going to be added to this resolution.
Yes.
Olympia, do you want to say your second amendment now?
Yes. So my second amendment, I haven't written as I did the previous one because I just realized it while Alicia was reading it. It's, as you know, I work a lot on small businesses, so great that we did this resolution. However, the people who are hurting most right now in our neighborhood are the gig workers. And for them, what will make a huge difference is either, because a lot of them are 1099 independent contractors, either the expansion of unemployment benefits to them, or the other thing that will make a huge difference is the rent suspension bill. because that Giannaris introduced yesterday and Yulin introduced today, because fundamentally, if they don't have the money to pay on April 1st, they would be liable to eviction in 90 days. And guess what? If they are rent stabilized, if they have any history of organizing and their landlord dislikes them, they're gonna for sure evict them. So we need, I think, to add one sentence toward the end of this resolution and say, you know, the smallest of small businesses are, of course, independent contractors, etc. And for that, Community Board 3 believes that a rent suspension, as long as the eviction moratorium is lasting, should also be enacted, or something like that. I can work on language when I focus later, but I wanted to raise it because before we vote on it.
Olympia, I don't know. I mean, should we discuss that further? Because I'm feeling that that might need to be a separate, I don't know. What does everyone think?
We've got Lisa Kaplan first.
Yeah, I'm not clear. So is the amendment intended to refer to residential rent of independent contractors, not to commercial rents? If that's the case, I do feel like it doesn't really fit in this resolution, that maybe we need to do something separately about independent contractors and their very unique issues, but I don't think it really fits here.
So the businesses also want it. The reason for which I brought it up here is because in the advocacy level, independent contractors, they say that 1099s are also businesses, right? But they work in a different way. My concern is I'm happy for us to have a separate thing for the independent contractors. However, there is the urgency of the fact that the Senate needs to vote on it within the next few days. So it should need to pass today. Is there a procedure by which we can introduce a new reso now and accept it? Or should we just go with that narrative in which we talk about that independent contractors are the smallest businesses of all, who are now at zero income, and thus they cannot, they cannot provide for anything. Many of them, unfortunately, not all of them, thankfully.
Well, Olympia, we don't do resolutions, like introduce new resolutions at full board. Not that I know of, but again, I think that this should be something separate, because tonight we're just dealing with the small businesses. So let's just deal with the small business.
Alistair?
Then means we're not gonna ever deal with this, right? Because it's a
I
unique
didn't say
situation.
that, Olympia. I didn't say we were never going to deal with it, but I'm saying right now we're dealing with what's on hand. The one being presented to us tonight, that came before us tonight. Okay. I didn't say that we weren't going to deal with it.
Alistair, did you still have a comment you wanted to make?
Yes, hi. No, I was just responding to Olympia's comment, and I think that's that's a fine idea for people that have problems to not have to pay the rents. The only issue, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but when next month comes in, just from a management perspective and landlord's perspective, we have no idea what income is going to come in, and from that income, what expenses we will be able to pay. So if there is a further resolution down the road, I would just ask that if there is a relief of rent, that there is some type of relief on the real estate taxes on the landlord side, for example, which has already been mentioned here, so that can kind of offset, and then landlords can continue to pay for the essential services for the buildings and for our tenants, and be able to take care of everybody as best we can. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. We have Jackie Wong now.
I also don't think the contractor issue fit in the resolutions that we are discussing tonight. And also, since Yulin News Office representative mentioned a little bit earlier that there are going to be some amendments about the bill. So I feel like I don't know enough about how this rent freeze and also how that would affect the landlords. So like Robin talked a little bit earlier, this is going to be a domino effect, how the landlords are going to pay their mortgage. And so I think I would want to wait until the whole bill comes out to talk about like how do we help like different groups of people. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Michael Perlis next.
Hi, yeah, I'm wondering if we could just discuss the rent suspension bill at the next housing committee and then bring it to the full board next month.
Seems like it's what we need to do. I know that we have limited meetings coming up next month because agendas have already been put together, but let's continue the conversation with Olympia.
Hey, so I mean, I already put in the chat the fact that for the landlords and the single family, what do we call them, homeowners, there has already been a 90 days moratorium on mortgage payments, right? So you knew that. It has been announced from all the banks, and so you move in your head. I can send you the information, but my concern here is my understanding, and if there is anybody who knows better than me the state, I'm more familiar with city council, but the state, the session is ending in 6 days if we have any representatives. So this legislation that has been introduced by January and Yuli knew, even if there's going to be amendments, they're going to be done like within the next 4 or 5 days. So I mean, of course, we can discuss it theoretically whenever you want. But fundamentally, if we do want to help these people right now, we should find a proper way of either doing a separate reso or creating a bubble there. But if there is if others feel that this is not as urgent and important, you know, of course, I can't. It's a democracy. I'm happy to withdraw this suggestion.
All right, let's go on to our next hand raise from Robin.
Yeah, as an independent contractor, I think that this should be a resolution discussed at a committee level, because I think to add it in as a line item in this resolution to me doesn't give it the importance that it needs to. So I think it needs to be discussed if it's a housing meeting, or maybe it could be economic, part of the cultural arts and cultural committee also. So I don't think it's just. I think we're not, yeah, that's what I think. So I'm going to add my opinion to that.
Thank you, Robin. So Olympia, hearing all this discussion, do you want to withdraw or do you want us to vote on it?
I mean,
hold on, you're muted, Olympia.
I was wondering, basically you unmuted me and I unmuted me, and we. So I was going to say, my thing is, I would like as much, you know, conversation to be happening about this horrible problem that people are going to be facing in 6 days from now. And so if you think that voting it and being voted down, it gives it some air, let's vote on it. But fundamentally, I really believe this is tragic. I mean, among all the tragedies, this is also more tragic.
So let's hear from Damaris.
I'm trying to figure out this Zoom thing here. Hang on.
All right.
So I thought what could be helpful to the conversation is to know that there are major efforts happening all around the city, including Housing Justice for All, which is asking for not only a rent freeze, but rent forgiveness. And so I think there's a few things to be noted here. I think everyone is going to be hurting, including the landlords and landlords like NYCHA. If there were rent forgiveness, 1 to 2 months of not receiving rent for an institution like NYCHA could be devastating. So I just wanted to add for folks to think about whatever position we're going to take, be that we're going to, you know, add on an amendment to this resolution or compose a second resolution. I think what we have to be calling for also is for relief to be given to all those institutions, because as you relieve one entity, another one hurts. And so what we need to be doing is asking both the state and the federal government to make sure that in whatever relief packages come to New York moving forward, and maybe this is a pipe dream, maybe it's not, that there be additional resources that are there targeted specifically for things like rent, because you know, you can give somebody, you know, a rent freeze, but if they lost their job, that doesn't mean they're not going to face eviction later on. And equally, you know, if a landlord is not receiving any rent, how do they pay for operations? And so that goes not only for small landlords, but bigger ones like NYCHA. So I don't think we could be just calling for these things. I think we have to be responsible in our call for this and say, all around, we need a freaking bailout.
Thank you,
And
Jamel.
that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
I
so are
just
you
want to say,
suggesting to add language, or to what are you suggesting? I didn't
I'm
understand.
suggesting that we're not doing this right now because we have this resolution on the table. And we need to deal with this particular resolution. And for the sake of time, it is already 9:30. And I think that a bunch of people did not intend on being on this Zoom for more than a couple of hours. So we need to just be mindful of that. And I do agree with Damaris. There's going to be so many other situations that are going to pop up one at a time. So, and I do respect what you're saying, Olympia. I'm not disregarding anything that you're saying. I'm just saying, as of right now, tonight, we cannot vote on doing a resolution tonight. Okay?
Yeah, but I think David Crane can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that because she has suggested an amendment, we need to vote on it one way or the other in order to move on.
So I'm withdrawing it.
You're
if
withdrawing it,
This
okay.
is going to help.
All right. So the amendment's withdrawn. Thank you.
No, but only the second one, not the first.
Yeah. The first one has already passed. So moving on, I am going to make a friendly amendment as well to the last bullet point where it says increasing of the loan amount to $150,000. As Alicia mentioned, that was indeed supposed to be $250,000. So I would like to make that amendment so that that amount is increased to $250,000. So any discussion on that by anyone? All right, there doesn't seem to be any. There is a feature, thank you, Dominic, for reminding me about it. In the just above the chat window, there's a yes, no feature. So we're going to use that to vote for this amendment. So if you are for the amendment of increasing the amount to $250,000, click yes. If you're against it, click no.
Go ahead and do this, but for other things where you really believe it's a friendly amendment, you can just ask if there is an objection.
Okay.
Like you did that with by hands earlier. It'd be interesting to see if we can actually count 50 votes this way efficiently.
So far, it's 19-1. 22-1. Keep voting, people.
What if you don't feel qualified or?
Dominic suggested raising your hand to abstain. Dominic's full of good suggestions tonight. All right, so we have one abstention and 27 yeses currently, and no nos. Apparently, whoever voted no changed their mind. So I believe we can say that that has passed. David, are you good with that?
I am. I'm reviewing things, and I'm just curious on how are we preventing non-members from voting by this method? I mean, not to do any of this over. I'm just pointing this out as a thought.
Sure.
Good.
Okay, Alicia, I believe we can move on now.
Okay, thank you. So we have a social media policy that we need to vote on tonight as well. Can you pull that up, Michael?
Yep, doing it now.
Do you want to read it?
Do I want to read it? It's really long, but yeah, sure.
No, we don't. I don't think we need to read it if everyone can see it. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity, if you haven't read it, because Ed also emailed this to the members of the board, but there are non-members of the board. You guys should be able to read it. And so this is what we're going to vote on tonight. And I don't know that we do need to read this whole thing because it is quite lengthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically, I mean, I can give everyone a synopsis. So basically, we had a policy that was in place already that was very, very strict about what we were able to post on our social media. It was basically, the only thing we were able to post was our calendar of meetings. So this is still sort of very based on that policy, but it opens it up a little bit more to allow us to post other items that are of importance to members of the community. You know, we're not going to be promoting events or anything like that unless we're co-sponsoring an event. But it also gives the further guidance on who needs to approve posts before they are able to go on to any of our social media. So both Alicia and the district manager, Susan, have 24-hour lead time before we post anything to say yay or nay to it. And I will tell you that we have been using this 24-hour process already, and it has been working. There have been a couple of things that we've been told not to post, and for the most part, everything else has gone through without incident. Other than that, the only other big changes are, again, opening it up to the other types of postings that we can put on Facebook and Twitter that aren't just about our meetings. So, you know, as you've probably seen, if you're following either one of those platforms right now, we've been posting things about the census. We've been posting some updates about COVID-19 resources. You know, we've posted some pictures of some of our meetings and things like that. So this just lays out the roles and responsibilities of what we can and cannot post.
Okay, so everyone received this email, and I'm hoping that everyone read it. So we are going to move, if there's no.
Let me go out of the screen share for a second and check, because I see that there are some comments.
There's some comments, but it's around conversation.
Okay.
Okay. So then we've also had another vote to approve a block party for Assembly Member Epstein. And so CB3 approves the block party for Assembly Member Harvey Epstein. It's going to be May 9th on East 7th Street between Avenue B and C. Anybody oppose this? Okay, so we'll put it in the vote, the final vote. Michael, is there anyone opposing it?
Hold on one second. I went back into screen share to show you guys that. So, no, there are no hands raised.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kathleen K, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand this is in May, but I would put a caveat that it will depend on COVID-19.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a given. Yeah.
Is it?
Thank you. Thank you, Kay.
Yep.
Heidi, was that the same comment? I just saw you lower your own hand.
Yeah, it was the same exact comment that May seems a bit close.
Okay.
All right. And lastly, we have the bylaws task force. Lisa?
Yes, we've heard about this for 2 months now. I'm hoping it doesn't come as much of a surprise to anyone. It was in your vote sheet. Also, the track change version of the sections of the current bylaws that are being amended, not to really change any provision, but just to make things a little clearer. I think there's been general consensus on the part of the executive committee that these were positive changes, and I would look forward to a vote.
Okay. Anyone have any conversation around this?
Please raise your hand if you have a comment or question about the bylaws change. There does not seem to be any.
Okay. And then last thing. Okay, now we're going to go into development of committee reports. So economic development, we read the resolution. Is there anything else, Megan, you need to say?
Nope.
Parks and Recreation, your meeting got canceled. Yes, Trevor?
Just to remind the committee that we will hear Tompkins Square renovation of the bathroom this month, along with the Brooklyn Bridge, Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Project, which extends from Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery Street. I don't know if Susan is still on, but
Yes.
have we confirmed the date on it yet?
No, we haven't. I'm still waiting to hear from people.
Okay, so just to remind the park members that we will meet to vote on 2 resolutions. Hopefully we'll have some information about those resolutions before we get to the meeting. I would also advise all the committee members to, I know this is the first time for many of us using this, to practice or to read some manuals for our parks meeting, because it will, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I don't want to go too late for 2 agenda items. And that was it.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Okay, Health and Human Services. May?
Oh, hello. So we have a resolution for you to vote on. It is on page 6 of your vote sheet. It is we talked about this before. It is a resolution to send a letter to HPD to request extension of the school, the land for the at Site 5 at Essex Crossing for the new school. Is because we have new factors and new information. The deadline is 2023, which is coming soon. So that's why we need the extension to continue advocating for the new school. The text of letter is in the resolution, and the resolution is to send the letter. Any questions?
I don't believe so. Let me switch back to the other screen. Nope, no hands are raised, May.
Okay.
Thank you, May.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question?
Oh.
I was surprised that the letter doesn't suggest an alternate date. That was deliberate, and could you explain that?
Can you repeat?
Sure. I was surprised to see that the letter doesn't suggest a new date beyond 2023. Maybe you could explain why you decided not to do that?
We just want to request an extension. I think we would talk to them about it. We did not discuss a date.
Lisa?
It seems odd to me, but it's fine if that's the committee's preference.
Any other questions, Michael?
No, ma'am.
Okay, SLA? Hey, Alex. Can't hear you, Alex.
I unmuted myself.
Okay, now you're there. Okay.
Better?
Yep.
Okay, so nothing to report from our 2 meetings. We had them both. In the coming month, we're going to have a virtual meeting. And I'll send out information to my committee members about that.
Thank you, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone have any questions about these SLA items? Everyone received them? Okay. Michael, anybody raising their hands or any questions?
No.
Okay, great. Awesome. So, that all being said, landmarks didn't meet, land use didn't, the meeting got canceled, transportation.
Are there any questions? I was not there, so I will defer those to Michelle if Michelle's willing to step forward.
Yes.
There does not seem to be any hands being raised.
Great.
Okay, and I believe that's it, guys. Oh my goodness, I think that's it. So now we're gonna have our final roll call vote.
Alicia, I believe you still have Essex Crossing Subcommittee.
Oh, I don't see it here. Okay. It's not on my vote sheet. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. No votes needed, but and I'll make this quick. So this month, of course, we didn't meet, but I gave a bunch of questions to the different members of the task force, and had everything compiled, and I shared a file with you all. So that has some raw notes. I wouldn't normally share a file like that, but I just basically took the email and the responses that we had shared with each other. Within that are some information about what's going on with the commercial spaces in Essex Market and around Essex Crossing. So related to COVID. I think the biggest news, though, if people haven't heard, is that the Grand Street Settlements Grand Lo Cafe, unfortunately, is going to be permanently closing at the end of the month, which is really too bad. But in the current climate, I think they were having a tough time to begin with, but in the current climate, their business model just doesn't make sense. So they're looking at potentially, at making it a community resource center. And a single stop for people that they have, they'll relocate there, so people can go in and get information on entitlements, sign up for benefits, tax prep, as well as potentially making it a youth and senior drop-in center. The other thing that isn't really spelled out in the document that I shared is around the community health network. They have another project that's going on in Brooklyn, which they got a really nice tax credit for, it was a big tax credit for that, which is going to enable them to reallocate funds so that they can afford to pay for the facility, to cover their rent that they currently have, and for the new rent in their new facility here on the Lower East Side. So from what I understand, everyone is really happy about that, and it works out very well for the community health network. So, I just want to thank everyone, especially Susan, who really kept the pressure on and try to get EDC to be very responsive to helping them out. I think it was definitely one of those things that was an oversight on our part as we negotiated Essex Crossing and Spura. So I'm really happy that this has worked out well. So I think the rest of it is in there. There are some follow-ups that from the last board meeting, some questions, such as a question from Michelle about events and marketing and the space. There's responses in there. There's responses about bike racks. So if you're really interested, go ahead and open up the file and peruse the responses.
Sorry, I was muted and talking. We have a couple of hands raised. First one's Eric Diaz.
Hi, Dominic. Just a quick question. I perused through the file. The 12 new construction hires that were done in December. Just following up, I know it's been a question for the community board as far as how many is being reported as local hires. I'm not sure if you were able to get some information on that or not.
Yeah, I don't think I can ask them, but I don't think that they're tracking local versus outside the community. But I know that sometimes they do know, like they're told, and they'll learn that, and they may pass on that information. But I can find out if they do know about those.
Next question's from Olympia.
So it's not about the Essex Crossing, it's about the new business that I raised on the chat, and David wrote that there is a specific way in which we could call a meeting if a COVID-19 thing arises in the next few weeks and we wish to have a meeting. If you want to explain as this, David, if the executive is not the best way to resolve it, what should we do if there is some issue that we need to support as community board?
Are you asking me?
Yes,
Clarify?
because in
Oh,
your message, you,
I was just throwing out the options that are there that are obvious to me. And one is let the exec deal with it, which we actually have language in the bylaws saying emergency, whatever, irreparable harm, those kind of languages. The exec would be the committee that would hear it. That probably is suitable for most things. Then we do have a clause where members could initiate calling a special meeting. I don't know that there would be something in my mind, or I kind of say this when we have bylaws task force meetings that I've attended. This is they've declared martial law option, where we might want to object to that right away. I don't know. But you're talking about more normal things. And I'm not sure if we were to schedule a meeting, this is not me as parliamentarian. I believe that if we were to schedule a special meeting right now, it would be not very well attended. If we just set up a meeting that is going to happen for an eventuality, it's not going to be attended well. That's what I've heard.
yeah. So my suggestion was not for a full board meeting, but basically, since we are really threading uncharted territory, unfortunately, the COVID-19, and because daily I speak constantly with various politicians and they do ask for our support. Like, it really matters at this time that they can point to public support when they push for certain things. So if there is an easy way in which you think, maybe for instance, if you think that the XF can act quickly, what we can do is, if something like that arises, we send an email to the chair and ask that she convenes the exec, and we can all participate, the ones who can, listening, and then the exec votes. That's what you suggest?
Yeah, I'd have to review the bylaws. If the exec votes on something, it's not the full board that has done it. I think it would be just like every other committee. For instance, we will say, well, the land use committee has said this about the ULURP, but we're still waiting for the full board's position. And it's likely to be in line, right? That kind of a.
Susan, do you want to go ahead and talk?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kept trying to raise my hand. I didn't see it go up. So, Olympia, you said they're asking for our support, but nobody reached out to the board for support. So I'm not clear about who is asking for what.
Yes, so I was not referring as to they're asking for our support as CB3, but every politician, when you are working on the various issues, rent, unemployment, etc., they ask for public support. And what a better way for public support to come through the form of a community board, etc. So I was not saying that because I know how much you care about these issues, I never represent CB3 when I do my work.
Yeah.
I have to do my work.
That's not what I was referring to at all. You said they are asking for our support, but we work with the elected officials all the time, and no one reached out to us and said they want our support.
She's speaking about a hypothetical, if there were to be something for which they wanted support.
I didn't realize we're just talking about a hypothetical.
So I think, I think to wrap this up so that we can move on, I think that basically, as David was saying, we, the exec committee, took on some resolutions on an emergency basis at our exec meeting last week because committees did not meet because of what was happening with people sheltering at home and not wanting to go out and all the uncertainty that was happening. So there were some resolutions that we did last week that theoretically should have been done by their committees, but they were brought to the exec because of that. In a normal situation, the ideal is that the committee does the work on whatever resolution that they're bringing to the full board. So the issue, I believe, Olympia, that the second amendment that you wanted to make to that resolution about independent contractors and gig workers I think that that is something that needs to go to your committee to come up with a resolution to bring to the board. And if for some reason the committee doesn't meet this month, and I'm not sure, I don't know the calendar, it's not in front of me. Susan's raising her hand, so I'll let her tell us what the calendar is. Then possibly the exec can work on it. Susan, do you want to clarify?
Two things I want to mention. First of all, what I think might have been left out is that you've got to be sure and email the issue in to get it on the committee. So I just, I don't want that to drop off. We don't
Sorry,
have.
Susan, I didn't understand what you said. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, if you want to get it, what Michael said is it should go on the committee agenda. And I just wanted to add that in order to do that, you need to send an email to put it on the agenda, so that it gets scheduled on the agenda. As far as the calendar for this month, we don't have one. What we kind of loosely decided is that we would push the meetings toward the end of the month and deal with it, deal with it a little bit later and see what we needed to do and what meetings needed to be called. So it takes, the open meeting law requires 1 week. So I don't know when the decision will be made. I would actually suggest that maybe the exec might want to consider having some extra meetings this month to kind of consider how to proceed forward.
We don't need to decide that tonight. So I think the message is loud and clear that there might be a need for more meetings than we have currently scheduled, and that's something that we should probably look at.
So Michael, to summarize, what we decided is that if an issue arises, as long as we send an email and it is publicly announced for 1 week, then the exec will decide whether there needs to be an exec convening or some specific committee convening to address that, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically the issue is that, if somebody emails the office with an issue, we're not going to schedule the meeting just for that issue. It's a matter of whether or not that issue is going to be brought up at the exec or whether it will be handled at the next committee meeting for the committee that it makes the most sense to handle that issue. The small business resolution that we did last week was done under, an emergency situation because economic development couldn't do it in their meeting. Does that make sense? David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just a very tiny clarification about the 1 week thing. The law says that we have to give a 1 week public notice of the when and where, how to participate in the meeting. The law does not require us to publish an agenda. We always do, and we always will. I think, though, that on this one thing, then, if you were to find something, Olympia, that you really thought the exec needed to consider, and it was just days before the meeting, we could put it onto the, at the board chair's discretion, put it onto the agenda, and we would discuss it at the executive meeting, even if it was not a full week. That's my thinking about if Alicia and Susan, who has to deal with all that, are cool.
No, I don't, if I could say, I don't see any reason for that. Olympia could send in the email the next few days, and we would have it on the agenda. If something comes up at the very last minute, that's another situation. But why not just take care of it now?
Absolutely. I am talking about the thing that comes up 2 days before the meeting.
Okay. So that has always been the law, and it's never been what CB3, but CB3 and its, I believe, policies has not done that. But, it is an emergency, and it's something the exec committee can discuss.
Okay. Are we done with discussion about this?
Yes, Alicia, your microphone is really bad. I think if you need to hold it closer to your mouth.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Are we done with discussion?
If you say we are, we are.
Yeah, I think we need to be done with discussion on this because it is now 10 o'clock. Okay. So that all being said, I think that is the last comments for our reports for tonight, for the vote sheet. And so now we're going to go into our roll call vote. Eric? Eric, are you there?
Oh yeah. Okay, let's do it. David Adams.
Hello.
Is that a yes, David?
Hello.
David Adams, are you still on? He must have dropped off.
Okay.
Yaron Altman.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Yaron.
Jesse Beck.
Yes.
Dominic Berg.
Yes.
Lee Berman.
Yes, except no on SLA item number 7.
Okay, I got it. Carlin Chan.
Carlin's been on his phone the whole time. I don't know if everyone is aware of that, but Carlin has been on his phone along with, okay, was that Carlin?
No, it's Michael. I can see Carlin giving a thumbs up. For some reason, his sound is not working at all. We'll have to figure this out between now and his next meeting.
Okay.
And Dave Adams, I see you're still on. Did you hear your name called, Mr. Adams? Dave? All right, proceed.
I just saw him click the yes a couple times.
Okay. So he probably can't speak either.
Okay, I added him as yes. So moving forward, Jonathan Chu. David Crane. David?
Yes.
Okay. Felicia Cruikshank. Eric Diaz, yes. Alistair Akinamakis.
Yes.
All right. Shirley Fennessy.
Yes.
Cool. Ryan Gilliam.
Yes.
All right. Deborah Glass.
Yes.
Hi, Deborah. Is that a yes?
That was an affirmative. Hey, Eric.
Awesome. Herman Hewitt. Trevor Holland.
Yes.
All right. Linda Jones.
Yes.
Valentina Jones. Valentina Jones. All right. Tatiana Jurio.
Yes.
All right. Megan Joy.
Megan, you need to unmute yourself.
Joy.
Sorry. Yes.
All right, got you. Lisa Kaplan.
Yes.
Right. Olympia Kazi.
Yes.
Olympia. Okay, got you. Joseph Kearns.
Yes.
All right. Michelle Coopersmith.
Yes.
All right. May Lee.
Yes.
All right. Alicia Coleman.
Yes.
Ellen Liu.
Yes.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Alexandra Militano.
Yes.
All right. Michael Perlis.
Yes.
Paul Rangel. Carolyn Ratcliffe.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Damaris Reyes. Damaris?
Yes.
All right. Richard Ropiak. Thomas Rosa.
Yes.
Richard's been on the phone. I don't know why no one can hear him.
So is he voting yes?
Richard, are you able to talk?
He's emailed me. That's the only way.
There he
Oh.
is.
Oh, good.
Got you, Richard. All right.
Okay.
Robin Chattel.
Yes.
All right. Heidi Schmidt.
Yes.
All right. Larissa Scheinberg.
Yes.
All right. Clint Smeltzer.
Yes.
Anisha Stephen.
Yes.
Sandra Strother.
Yes.
All right. Josephine Velez. Josephine Velez.
Yes, I just unmuted. Yes, and good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Yes. Good
Got
night,
it.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for running the meeting, Michael. Thank you.
Wait.
Oh, oh, okay.
Rodney.
Where you're not
Rodney.
roll call.
Yeah.
What?
Rodney Washington.
Sorry.
Rodney's
Washington.
Let's hear.
All right.
He's here.
Okay. Next, I'll just wait. Kathleen Webster.
Yes, except for item number 3, unless it clearly states pending COVID-19 pandemic status.
Item 3 for what, Kay? For the exec committee?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Rodney's there, Eric. You see him? He's trying to unmute.
I unmuted him.
I got you, Rodney. And Jackie Wong.
Yes.
All right.
Eric, Richard Ropiak, could you get me as a yes on minutes?
Yes, I did.
Great, thank you.
Alicia, do you want to wrap us up?
You gotta unmute me. Okay, good. All right, so everyone, thank you so much. If that's all being said, I wish you all a safe travels and to your beds or wherever you're going. Motion to adjourn.
Motion
I
to
make a
adjourn.
motion. Okay, all in favor. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Say good night.
Night. Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you, God. Woo.
God bless. God bless.
Leave, please.
Okay, how do I get off this thing?
Just hang up.